Hey, I'm Alex, and welcome to Hallucination. If you love true horror stories, consider subscribing. It really helps the channel grow. The stories you'll hear are shared by our audience from Reddit, and to keep their original essence, I read them exactly as they were written. Before we begin, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from? Also, check the timestamps in the comments for story titles and easy navigation. Now, let's dive into the darkness. To all the wannabe cryptid hunters, stay the fuck out of my woods. Did you know that self-proclaimed cryptid hunters are a thing these days? Turns out there's these online communities full of sick badasses who order combat gear on Amazon and drive out to supposedly haunted locations to explore and film themselves. Why am I ranting about this? Apparently, some shithead has shared the location of the plot of land that's been in my family for generations. Now you'd think owning an entire patch of woodland would mean we're rich, but it's actually really costly to take care of. No forestry work can be done there, and our staff is constantly patrolling the area looking for irregularities. It's a dangerous job, and we've lost more than a few hires in regrettable ways. Most of the time, when everyone's careful and meets the required precautions, everything goes over smoothly and the things in the forest are kept in check. I wish we could just fence the perimeter and be done with it, but due to reasons too complicated to explain right now, that's not an option. Plus, it's pretty lonely out here. You'd have to drive off roads for half an hour to get here, so we normally don't have to deal with any unexpected visitors. There's a spot in my woods I frequent, a little clearing surrounded by tall trees and wild rose bushes. I always light a campfire there to sit at and relax. Right now the ground is frozen over. We've had a lot of snowfall, but I don't mind the chill. I do so love those pretty icicles hanging from the branches. The clearing is my refuge from everything. I'm not good with people and day-to-day interactions exhaust me, so being by myself is something akin to an essential need of mine. Yesterday afternoon, I was hanging out in my usual spot when suddenly a voice called out to me from behind. "You, turn around." When I got to my feet, I found myself facing a young man of the very species I described earlier, armed, cargo pants, combat boots, and camo backpack. There was a small camera mounted to his helmet. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I asked, trying to keep my cool. He backed off, visibly puzzled. "I thought you were some kind of ghost. I'm the legal owner of these woods, and if you don't get off my property this instant, I will call the police," I told him. "Why are you wearing a wedding dress?" he stuttered. "This is my private property. I could dance around stark naked if I wanted to." "How on earth did you find this place?" "The woods. I read about them online. Someone posted about there being creatures here, cryptids." "So you thought you'd go check it out?" I squinted at him. Something wasn't quite right with that guy, aside from him being crazy enough to show up here in the first place. I could sense something looking at him, but I couldn't put my finger on it, just a hunch. But my gut instinct never misleads me. "Yeah, I'm a cryptid hunter, or well, I don't hunt them per se. I guess I would, I just haven't been all that successful yet," he admitted with an awkward chuckle. Here, I said flatly. I couldn't shake the weird feeling he was giving me. "You're still trespassing. Say, did anyone stop you on your way in?" "No, why? Is there someone else here?" How the hell had he gotten past the security staff? There had to be a blind spot somewhere which he had accidentally come across. I decided not to let on how many safety measures we had in place. Better not to further pique his interest. "Nope," I lied, patting down my skirt. "Come on. Follow me. I'll see you out." "Can't I just have a look around? If there's something in those woods, you'd be safer if I took care of it." "I'm certain." I was about to send him on his way a little more firmly when I realized it. There was a disturbance in his aura. Something had set its sights on him. "Were you followed here?" I asked sharply. "What? No, I don't think so." "Did you encounter anyone on your way? A man wearing his caftan crossed left over right?" "What's a caftan?" I ignored the question. "Did you maybe notice a flock of birds at some point?" "Yeah, sure. I mean, we're in the woods." "There are no birds in my woods anymore," I said sternly. "You're in danger. Something here has been following you." What? Aren't you a cryptid hunter? Shouldn't you know?" "Well, I haven't had many encounters yet." The man was starting to look panicked. "You're trying to get a rise out of me, aren't you?" His trembling voice told me he didn't actually believe that. "Then most certainly not. Trust me. I can tell. I can always tell. You've gone and crossed a spirit." A spirit? So there's actual paranormal activity here. You already knew? We need to get you out of here, I hissed. Come on, help me pack up. Douse the fire. He followed my instructions while I hastily gathered my belongings. Then, we took off running. I spurred him on, hoping to get back onto one of the beaten paths leading out to safety. My heart was pounding in my chest, but I knew my companion was so much more afraid. He had every reason to be, and deep down, he knew. I didn't know what he'd expected, coming here in search of a thrill, but this was most likely too much for him. What did you do? I panted, not daring to slow down. You must have done something to upset him. Did you try to fell a tree? I shot at a rabbit with my crossbow earlier. I only wounded it though. It ran off on me. He gritted out in between gasps for air. Who's he? I really didn't see anyone around. He can come in a lot of shapes. Oh, for crying out loud, I snapped, when he tripped over a root and fell, sprawling across the forest floor. I grabbed him and pulled him back up, grunting under his weight. He was heavy as fuck with all that gear on. The trees were starting to let up though. Hope renewed. I steered the cryptid hunter towards the light beckoning through the leaves. Keep going. We're almost there. He wouldn't move. I gave him a bewildered frown. What are you doing? Keep running, you dumbass. You've been shitting me this whole time, haven't you? He asked sharply. There's nothing to run from, is there? Oh dear God. Keep running, I repeated. If you want to live, you need to get out. Look, lady, I'm not going to play along anymore. You nearly scared me shitless back there. I'll admit that, but the fun's over. We'll get off your property. Sure, but you could have just told me in a... He fell silent upon realizing that my eyes were transfixed on something behind him. It stood tall between the trees, its enormous branch-like antlers stretching up to disappear in the foliage. Its head bore more resemblance to the skull of a diseased deer, bone exposed with bloodied strips of flesh hanging off it. Its body overall was humanoid, with rough, thick bark replacing its skin. Moss lined its back and unproportionally long arms. Twigs and leaves sprouted from its wide shoulders. It glared at us out of gleaming green eyes. The hunter slowly turned around to meet the creature's gaze. His face fell. "Kneel," I breathed, sinking down and lowering my head. The young man didn't react at first. "It's too late to flee," I repeated in a low voice. "Kneel and pray for his mercy." Finally, he dropped to the ground next to me. The Leshy proceeded towards us, his steps completely silent. I had already had a few close encounters with this beast, and I had prayed not to evoke his wrath ever again. I could only hope I wouldn't be punished for the explorer's transgressions. I thought we had an understanding, you and I. The creature's voice chilled me like the icy forest wind. I felt one of its long wooden fingers reach out to touch my face, tipping my chin up and forcing me to look up at it. "Forgive us, my lord," I said quietly, holding the beast's gaze. "Then will you let me have this mortal?" My eyes began to fill with tears. I couldn't bring myself to respond. "I'll ask you again, will you let me have this mortal?" "Please don't," I whispered. The man beside me had started to cry, sobs of fear shaking his shoulders. "Sweet soul, you do so hate carnage. I'll allow you to avert your gaze while I feast." Grasped by utter hopelessness, I turned the other way, hugging myself as I shut my eyes. Gunshots rang out, their volumes stinging my ears. The explorer was probably firing away for dear life, but the futility of defending oneself against this creature with simple bullets didn't go lost on him. "Hey lady, do something." He started tugging on my sleeve, but I brushed off his hand. "Help me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Please just help me." I couldn't. Not anymore. My blood ran cold when the explorer let out a gurgling scream and was dragged away from my side. His cries of agony mixed with the sound of crunching bones, flesh and muscle being torn and blood spattering. I felt it hit my bare back, warm and sticky, staining my white gown. Tears were rolling down my cheeks and my lower lip was bleeding where I dug my teeth into it. By the time the horrific noises had finally died down, it felt like an eternity had passed. A satisfied growl rumbled somewhere behind my back. "Be on your way now, darling, and don't bother my animals with your weeping." I left without looking back. At home, I turned on the shower to sit and cry beneath it. I tried to tell myself that this cryptid hunter wasn't a great loss to the world, but even if his hobby of choice had frankly been dumb and ill-conceived, he'd probably still been a normal guy despite it all. That's what I thought about while I went around my property, searching for traces of his entrance. I found his vehicle, a beat-up brown pickup truck, on the outskirts of the eastern side of the plot of land. I disposed of it discreetly. Poor guy. He'd only wanted to see some action, though it could be held against him that he'd never looked up what a leshy was. The first time I'd encountered the leshy, I had known what he, or rather it was. My mother had warned me, telling me that, while benevolent at times, he and those of his kind had a habit of stealing young women. I held her teachings dearly, and I still do, seeing as I actually inherited our land from her side of the family. She educated me about these grounds, about the dangers within them. Even before she died, I would take long walks through the woodland, setting up camp here and there, and basically spending all my free time in them. The winter around the same time that I started wearing my wedding dress, I was taking a walk to check out the grounds after the first snowfall. A thin, delicate layer of pristine white covered the treetops and meadows, offering a beautiful sight. All was well until I spotted a figure approaching from beyond the tree line. I stopped in my tracks. Nobody was supposed to be wandering around here except for myself and my family's employees, so either this guy had gotten lost or he was one of the local entities. He drew nearer and nearer, stopping just a few feet ahead of me. Taking in his appearance, my heart sank. He was wearing a kaftan crossed left over right. His bearded face bore little trace of emotion, and he was holding a large cudgel. When he spoke, it was in a deep, snarling voice with a Slavic accent. "I've seen you in my woods before. You're the heiress, aren't you?" "Yes, sir," I pressed out, swallowing the lump in my throat. "Then you must know who I am." "Yes, sir." "What am I to call you?" "Heiress." I hesitated. "I won't steal your name if you tell me," he said, as though he'd read my thoughts. "I'm Fiona," I said breathlessly. "You're very pretty." He tilted his head at me. "I could love you if your eyes weren't so lifeless." He paused before shouldering the cudgel and walking onwards. "Send your mother my regards," he said over his shoulder as he passed me. Throughout our time as owners of the woods, the leshy has lured quite a few of our security staff members into traps. Had led them astray, they'd get lost in the woods and would find them drowned in the lake sometime later. He did bring back my father's dog when it ran off that one time though. Most of the time he's neither hostile nor benevolent, but he is territorial. He likes to remind us of who's in charge. And of course he'd have my head if I dared to disrespect him by putting a fence in his forest. He's not the only thing that might kill you when you enter our plot of land, and there's worse deaths than being eaten alive. Believe it or not. You may have guessed it already, but this is a warning. Apparently, my property is being frequented by explorers or cryptid hunters. The guy that got eaten obviously couldn't have been the only one. Someone made us public. We're already implementing more security. This post serves two main purposes. First off, if you happen to be the person who first discovered these woods and shared their location online, please take it down. You're doing more harm than good. I don't know how you managed to make it out of here alive and unseen by me and my staff, but you got lucky. For your own sake, don't come back here. Secondly, and this is for all the others, if you heard of my or any other haunted woods for that matter, don't go exploring. It's not worth it. Since you're so curious to see what's in here, I'll tell you online at a safe distance. I've been scouring the internet, Reddit, 4chan, what have you? I've seen and read things I will never recover from, and I still haven't found the moron who doxed my haunted woods. It gets worse. 2 members of our security staff have since reported attempted entries. The would-be trespassers were guided off the property in both instances, but who knows how many might have slipped through the cracks. Please stop, people. Just stop. You're killing me. I'm tired, frustrated, exhausted, and I keep losing hair. I'm willing to bet a few corpses are going to show up in the springtime. All that snow and ice, once melted, are sure to reveal some gruesome sights. I've informed the personnel and told them to be on particularly high alert. We'll also be looking for new hires in the near future, once we're of means again. Right now, we're hemorrhaging money due to another ill-conceived business scheme my younger brother cooked up. Nothing worth explaining in any further detail, really. This is such a bad time for all of this too. We're in more than enough trouble around Yuletide each year either way. Starting December 12th, one by one, the Yule lads have been arriving in town. They love harassing our estate in particular, always have. Thankfully, they'll all be gone again pretty soon. If you don't know about the Yule lads, lucky you. They're basically a bunch of pesky old bearded tricksters getting up to mischief around Christmas time. They each have their own thing going on. For example, there's the spoon licker, an eerie-looking malnourished fellow who steals used spoons to lick food remnants off. Then you've got the door slammer, who runs around the house at night making a lot of noise to keep people from falling asleep. It was all good fun when we were little. My brothers and I would set up tripwires for the sheep called Claude, a Yule lad with stiff peg legs who likes to harass sheep. We'd stay up all night, hiding in the pen, waiting for him to show up. We'd all laugh at him when he'd walk into our trap and fall. He'd turn red with anger and march off, grumbling and grouching and shaking his fist at us. We'd also jam the doors using rolled up socks, stuffing them into that crack along the hinges. This meant that whenever the door slammer would try and do his thing, the door would give in just a little at first before whipping backwards, giving him a scare. So the Yule lads never gave us much of a fright. It was their mother we were more worried about. I only ever saw her twice, and that was more than enough for me. I wish we'd never had to find out about her at all. Since y'all are so interested in my forest and the hauntings, I'm going to make good on my promise from last time and feed you the story accordingly. A bit of background. I grew up as the oldest of 7 kids in total. Yup, 7. If you've ever wondered what life is like with 3 little brothers and sisters, it's, well, something. The boys and I got along famously for the most part. Although we got into our fair share of fistfights, I never spent much time around the other girls. I don't know why, they just never struck the right chord with me. My brothers, however, adored me, and they always jumped at the chance to get up to some dumb shit together. There was Jeremy, the second-born Casimir, and the youngest of the boys, Marion. We weren't particularly bad kids, just a little rebellious, except for Marion. Despite being the baby of the family, or perhaps because of it, he tended to take things a little too far. He'd light poop on fire, hide dead mice in our parents' shoes like a cat, and trash the living room. I don't know why he did it, not because we made him. The pranks we pulled as a group never targeted our parents, and we always kept any damage to the house minimal. We loved him, yes, but he could hardly be called a well-behaved child. He was more like one of the Yule lads himself. So one night, I must have been around 12. We were allowed to stay up a little later than usual to watch TV. They were screening some popular kids' movies at the time, so the 7 of us were all lying on the floor, each wrapped up in a warm blanket, while Mom and Dad sat huddled on the couch behind us. It was so comfortable, sprawling on the soft bearskin rug with the snow falling right outside our window. Everything was perfect until the doorbell rang. I instantly jumped to my feet, being the oldest. I always tried very hard to show the most initiative, leadership qualities and stuff. Before Mom could stop me, I skipped over to the door and opened it as far as the chain holding it in place allowed. I was about to greet the newcomer and ask what business they had in our neck of the woods at this time of night, but my voice caught in my throat. The woman peering in at me through the crack was the most ghastly person I'd ever seen in my young life. She wasn't just tall but enormous, her giant form hunched over and her large head hanging low. Her gray matted hair hung down from a tattered, mangy-looking scalp, and her nose was long and knobbly. Her pores were huge as lunar craters, her pale skin rough as sandpaper. When she spoke, her cracked lips parted to reveal rotten teeth. "You look delicious." A foul odor accompanied her words, and I shrunk back both at the smell and her eerily raspy voice. I stood frozen in fear, my legs refusing to move until I was suddenly pulled back into the safety of our warm living room. My mother moved to stand in front of me, protectively blocking her path. With the door still being secured, I reckoned there wasn't a big threat of her coming in anyways, but I had felt so exposed and vulnerable under her gaze, like a lamb moments before slaughter. "Dear madam," the giantess spoke again, this time addressing my mother. "I am so awfully hungry tonight. Please, please feed me. I need to eat." She reached through the doorway with a bony hand. Her long, dirty fingernails almost looked like talons. "Would you spare a morsel for me?" "Get lost," my mother spat back at her. Her voice was venomous, lethal, and the most comforting sound I could imagine in that moment. "Don't ever come near this house again if you know what's good for you. Don't send me off, please. Most merciful lady, just a morsel, a little morsel, that's all I'm asking for. You have more than enough. If you don't leave, I'll beat you till you're raw, you disgusting parasite." My siblings had started listening in at some point. Dad seemed to be trying to direct their attention back onto the TV, but there was no chance of that happening. "Eat shit and die," Marion shouted, giggling like he'd just told a joke. Lord knows where he got that language from at his young age. Mom turned to shush him, and the giantess shot him a quick look. There was a glint in her eyes. "Go away," Mom repeated with a little more emphasis. "You're not welcome here." With that, she shut the door in the woman's face. "Mom, who was that?" I asked, still a bit shaken up. "Her name's Grilla," she answered, nervously fumbling with her sleeve, "and she's no one you need to be worried about." I didn't sleep well that night. I dreamt of Gryla hiding in my closet. Having awoken with a start, I got up to fetch a glass of milk, the standard procedure for when I was restless. As I padded past the master bedroom, I could hear my parents talk in hushed, aggravated tones. What were they doing up? Intrigued, I lingered, pressing my ear up to the wooden door. "Why didn't you just give her something from the kitchen?" Dad asked. "You know it's not really food she's after. If we humor her, that only makes it worse," my mother hissed. "Shell thinks she's welcome here, and keep coming back. Don't you remember last year?" "Hey, I get it. I just wish the kids hadn't been around. It really creeped me out the way she just, looked at them." "It should," Mom replied testily. "You think I was fine with it? Does that change anything? That she saw them?" "I don't think so." Mom sounded uncertain. "At least I don't know that it does." Not being too reassuring there, honey. Should I lie and tell you she doesn't freak me out? I've been afraid of her since forever. My parents used stories about her to scare me into behaving back when I was little. Scarred me for life. A chill ran down my spine and I drew away from the door. Sneaking down the corridor back towards my own bedroom, I was acutely aware of every little sound I made. The slapping of my naked feet on the carpeted floor and the beating of my heart both seemed to be amplified to an unnatural volume. I wanted nothing more than to find myself in the presumed safety of my sheets again, hiding under my blanket until daybreak. That's when I heard something, a tiny muffled little grunt coming from Marion's room at the very end of the hallway. I stopped in my tracks, not daring to move a muscle. What was that sound? Had I misheard? Pulse thrumming in my ears, I stood and listened, still as a statue. There it was again, a dull thud followed by a stifled whimper. I had to go and check it out. I figured my little brother was simply having nightmares like I did earlier, but somehow I still didn't want to. Every single one of my limbs seemed to be opposed to the idea of going any further. Forcing my legs to move, I proceeded down the suddenly much longer seeming corridor until I reached Marion's room. I gently rapped on the door. No response. Everything had fallen silent inside. "Marion?" I whispered. Still nothing. I slowly nudged the door open, nimbly slipping through the crack, only to come to a staggering halt the second I laid eyes on what was inside. There, in the middle of the room, stood this awful, terrifying woman. Her back bent to allow her to fit in under the ceiling at all. She glowered down at me from above. When she opened her mouth to speak, blood dripped from her long, lolling tongue, and she stopped to lick her lips, smearing it all over her cheeks. "What's wrong, dear? I only took a morsel." With that, she raised her hand, and before I could even fully process what I was seeing, I was already screaming. Her long, gnarled fingers were holding up my little brother's severed head by the hair. His lifeless, glassy eyes were staring right through me, his mouth contorted in a silent cry of fear. Cackling, Grayla dropped the head onto the floor and ducked to worm her way through the open window. I saw her running through the snow outside into the direction of the woods, her dirty gray shawl trailing after her and her laughter lingering in the chilly winter air. When my parents came storming in mere seconds later, my mother broke down instantly. Her wails of shock, of grief, loss and heartbreak were more harrowing than the voice of the giantess. I fell into my father's open arms, pressing myself against him as my body was shaken by sobs. We shut and locked the door behind us, to keep the other kids from coming in and seeing what was left of Marion. For a while, it was all we could do to sit and weep, all huddled up in a large, shivering pile. None of us got up, not even to close the window through which the cold wind was blowing in. Christmas time was never quite as much fun after that. No one ever set foot into Marion's room again. We buried his head out in the yard, then barricaded his chamber from the outside. That was it. Suddenly, my parents were short a child, and I was without my little brother. A life had been erased, with nothing anyone could do about it. A fresh wound to each member of the family that couldn't be healed except through time. You'd think this tragedy would bring us closer together, but I actually believe that this was the night we all started alienating. My mother never let anyone in on her misery except me. To her, I was always the child who'd suffered the second most, the one who'd found Marion's head. Shed always wanted to make me the official heiress to the woods, and her decision only cemented itself through the bond we thus formed. She stopped doting on my siblings as much. She never neglected them, but made it clear I was her favorite. Dad started kind of resenting her for it, and by extension me. Yeah, I think that's how we all began drifting apart. We'd never grow back together. The big house would slowly empty, leaving only me and my staff. Recounting this has been painful, obviously. I hope you'll take it as another warning not to come here. Our property isn't a fun house or a Halloween attraction. I have dedicated my whole life to keeping this forest safe, to keep the things inside from spilling out, so please have a little respect for my efforts. Just a tiny little bit. This time of year is really something. Frost is painting the window panes, the snowflakes look like tiny stars falling from the sky, and I found a corpse on my property today. Or rather, one of the security guards did. He called me right away, talking in that sort of low, empty tone. He sounded dead inside, for lack of a better word. Miss Novak. He fell silent for a few seconds, like he hadn't really thought of what to say next. You should come to the Red Meadow, I think. What do you mean, you think? I asked, a little annoyed seeing as I'd been busy with some computer work at that moment. I instantly regretted my brusque tone. There's a body. I nearly dropped my cell phone. Suddenly feeling weirdly disconnected from myself, I staggered to my feet and began fumbling for my keys. I'll be right there, Gus, I promised, voice trembling before ending the call. The Red Meadow is a wide plain right outside the eastern edge of the woods. It's full of these strange scarlet flowers. They're about the same size as a regular old daisy, and their petals are shaped a bit like tiny hearts. Weirdly enough, we've been unable to identify them. There are many flowers like them, but none are an exact match. My father used to be obsessed with them. He was always picking and drying them. He never found out more about them either, though. Today, a blanket of snow covered the meadow, yet the intense red of the flowers still managed to shine through in some places. I could see Fergus standing near the tree line, stiffly waving to me. His shallow, labored breaths rose from his lips in tiny plumes of vapor as he jogged to meet me halfway. I didn't see it happen, he said dryly. I heard screams, I followed them, and there he was. Whatever did it was already gone by the time I got there. He led me over to the body, a man in his 30s, dressed in much the same functional clothes as the first cryptid hunter who'd found his way onto my property not too long ago. My head was reeling. How did these guys keep getting in? I think he died of fright, Gus remarked. When I found him, he was lying on his stomach with one of his arms underneath him. Why'd you roll him over? Checking for injuries. Found nothing. Not even a trace of blood. Look at his face, though. I sighed. I'd admittedly avoided doing so up to that point. I knelt down next to the dead man, gathering my large, far too voluminous skirt at my sides. I raised my eyes to meet the corpse's empty gaze. Shaking my head, I tried to chase the flashing memories of my little brother's severed head from my mind. All those who die in fear seem to share this same look. Their horror remains imprinted on their contorted grimace, preserved for those unfortunate enough to happen upon their bodies. Fergus was probably right. The way he'd found this man suggested he'd been on his way out of the woods, presumably running from something. Another thrill-seeker who'd had too much of a good thing. It was even sadder to see him here, beyond the tree line. He'd nearly made it out alive. Then the adrenaline must have overtaxed his heart, and he'd fallen over, clutching his chest. I wondered if he'd realized what was happening. Maybe not. Maybe he'd been so terrified by whatever was chasing him that he hadn't even seen it coming. Either way, in his last moments, there had only been him, this fearsome unknown entity and his exerted failing body. What a shitty way to go. Are you okay, Gus? Do you want to go home? You need me here, don't you? I do, but I don't want you to go around like nothing happened when you just found a body, I argued. I'll be okay. It's not the first time we've had a death here. I gave him a concerned frown. He didn't sound all that convincing. He obviously didn't want me to fuss, so I didn't, but it felt crappy leaving him on that note. I told him to follow his normal route, hoping the rest of the day would go smoothly for him. To me, however, this corpse meant a lot more work. First off, I would have to dispose of him. It's not like we go entirely unnoticed out here. We could get a visit from the police in due time. Now my family has maybe 2 or 3 friends among the local authorities who know what's really going on in these woods. They're likely to see to it that if someone goes missing on our property, no further inquiries are made. Imagine a search being launched in my forest. It'd be a bloodbath. Even so, best not to risk anything. The corpse still needed to disappear. The easiest way to do that was to dump it in the lake. In case I haven't mentioned it before, the lake is located about a 20-minute walk from the Red Meadow in a lighter, less densely wooded area. It's twin lakes, actually, connected by a fierce old stream. I had the bigger one in mind though. Drop something in there and it'll be gone in a flash. Fall in yourself, and, oh well, it hasn't frozen over yet this year, so I decided to go for it right away. I don't have a vehicle fit to transport a corpse through the woods, but I do have Jeanette. Jeanette is a mule. I got one of my workers who was hanging out at my family's house at the moment to bring her right over. We loaded her up and I got on my way. The woods were quiet, as per usual. Walking alone normally agrees with me, but hauling a corpse and a stubborn mule really put a damper on the mood. I tried to focus on the glittering snow beneath my boots and the many shiny icicles that made the forest resemble a stalactite cave, anything but the dead body bobbing up and down on the back of the animal beside me. We were getting on slower than I'd hoped. The wintry air was beginning to sting my bare shoulders. Seeing as I normally didn't mind it at all, that was saying something. Jeanette was being a drama queen. She always knows when I really need her help, and it's then that she's the most uncooperative. With the sun going down in the afternoon this time of year, darkness was already beginning to settle over the treetops. The water surface was still and undisturbed, covered partially by thin plates of ice. I surveyed the lake with bated breath. As peaceful as it looked, I knew how volatile a state this tranquility posed come nightfall. "Grandfather," I called out into the darkness, trying to keep my voice down. Now, the creature I was hoping to rouse obviously isn't my actual grandfather. It's just a nickname he, the Vodyanoi, goes by. I needed to talk to him to ask permission before laying the ill-fated explorer to rest in his waters. The lake stayed eerily quiet. "Grandfather," I repeated, a little louder this time. I hated having to raise my voice. The woods prefer silence. To my frustration, I received no response. The water remained an unblinking black mirror without so much as a single bubble rising to the surface. It didn't look as though Grandfather Vodyanoi was going to show up, which meant that I was being faced with a difficult decision. I really didn't want to stick around for anything that might have overheard me shouting to drop in. I would have to dump the cadaver without consulting the big boss. Against my better judgment, I dragged the body off my mule and rolled it towards the edge of the lake. Giving it one last powerful shove, it fell off the small ridge and disappeared with a satisfying plop. I imagined it rapidly sinking to the bottom and a weight fell off my shoulders. I lingered for merely a minute, wallowing in my melancholy and wondering if the Vodyanoi would be mad at me when he woke up to find I'd used his haunting grounds as garbage disposal. That question would not go unanswered for long. Just as I turned to leave, I heard a frantic, enormous splashing sound. Whirling around, I let out a yelp of surprise when I saw the creature rise from the murky depths. He was twice my size, an old green-skinned man with a nightmarishly contorted face that resembled that of a catfish more than a human's. I staggered backwards as he started dragging himself up onto the dry land on his big paunch, his morbid fleshy masses wrinkling and wriggling grotesquely. Algae hung in his long tangled white hair and scales covered the lower part of his body, which thinned into a fishtail. I cursed myself for not waiting for him earlier. Perhaps he heard me, lingering just beneath the surface, expecting me to make a transgression he could justly punish me for. I could feel I was about to pay dearly for my impatience. "Grandfather, I'm sorry," I instantly cried out. I was nervous. I had to be quick, so He didn't answer, only letting out a gurgling laugh as he wrapped one of his webbed paws around my ankle, throwing me off balance. I landed on my ass in the dirt, blindly thrashing and kicking at his face, but before I knew it, he tugged me into a forceful embrace. Pressed up against his slick, saggy chest, I gagged at the foul odor he emitted. The slimy muck coating his skin rubbed off onto my face, arms and dress, instilling such a deep sense of disgust within me that I couldn't help but heave. Now soiled with my own vomit, I was pulled into the icy water. I was too shocked, physically as well as mentally, to fathom a single clear thought. All I could do was screech like a banshee. The Vodyanoi let go of me, giving me a meaningful look before shoving me further out onto the lake. My dress bore me up, and I was sent gliding through the water. "I do so despise impertinence," he called out to me, his voice equal parts rage-filled and amused. It was raspy, wet, and blubbering, as though he was retching out water from his lungs with every word he said. "See you at the bottom." With that, he sank down, not causing a single splash. Fuck. Mom had warned me never to stand too close to the water's edge. What the hell had I been thinking? I started swimming towards the ridge again, only to realize in horror just how difficult it was. My voluminous skirt was already soaked, its weight seemingly doubling mine. There was white all around me. My puffed sleeves had tightened, gripping my upper arms like chains. I was fighting against my own wedding dress, and it quickly gained the upper hand. I was barely able to stay afloat, much less reach firm ground again. My head kept bobbing under. I couldn't keep it above the surface for long. Gasping for air, my rapid movements brought me closer and closer to exhaustion. Just as I was sinking down once more, I caught a glimpse of a menacingly tall silhouette looming over the lakeside. "Quick, take my hand if you want to live." Dilesh's voice cut through the water. I could hear it clearly even when submerged. Summoning my last bit of strength, I flung myself out of the water and reached for the monstrous log-like arm he extended to me across the surface. It was long enough for me to climb it like an entire tree, but I was still too heavy. The dress dragged me under. I couldn't pull myself up. Sputtering and gasping for air, I dug my fingers into Dilesh's bark skin. "Shed your down," the wood demon commanded, urgency swinging along in his tone. "Wench, it'll drown you." "I can't," I cried out. "Pull, just pull, I'll hang on." He let out a growl, then abruptly drew back his arm, taking me along. Plowing through the freezing water, I felt a relief unlike anything I'd ever known. Once I was close enough, he grabbed me with both hands and lifted me out of the water, dropping me beside my mule. Jeanette had been standing beneath one of the old lakeside trees, resting up and not really minding my near-death experience. Coughing up dirty cold water, I huffed and panted, trying to catch my breath while furiously rubbing my own upper arms to try and regain some semblance of feeling in my frozen skin. I didn't see the Leshy change form, being more occupied with myself at that moment, but when I looked up again, I found the bearded man with the cudgel standing over me. "Why didn't you get out of your dress?" he asked testily. "I couldn't. It's hell to get into in the first place. You really think I can just pull down a zipper and it comes off?" He looked almost annoyed. It was odd seeing him display such a human emotion. He caught himself though, straightening up and clearing his throat. "I hope you're aware you just caused me some trouble, potentially. The Vadianoi is the lord of this lake. He's unlikely to appreciate my intrusion." "What are you getting at?" He didn't respond right away. Instead, he gave me a long look, appraising me. "He'll tell you what he hears. I'll see you home safely, so that you don't freeze to death or get taken advantage of. All alone out here, as you are, I will have saved you, and you are going to repay me." The air felt even colder all of a sudden. I yearned for a dry, warm blanket to wrap around my shoulders, but my garments were drenched and more likely to freeze me into a statue. As much as it pained me to admit it, I needed his help, dearly. "He'll pay you back accordingly," I promised, pressing the words out between chattering teeth. "But I'd be willing to bet you already have something in mind." "Right," he said. "Of course I do, and you will follow." I sighed. "Yes, sir, I will." "Well, I'm having a shit time. I caught a massive cold and my back hurts like hell. None of this would have happened if y'all weren't so goddamn stupid, you know? Of course, my pride has also been majorly wounded by having to crouch and crawl before someone like the Wood Demon. I had to give him a promise, but I'm gonna keep that to myself for just a little while longer. Anyways, my brother Casimir is staying over. He's probably the one family member I have the most contact with. The others have scattered across the country, and aside from the money they send me to help with the upkeep of the safety measures around the forest, there's not much communication going on. Hell, I don't even know what they do for a living, for the most part. Casimir's a real estate agent, so I know he's definitely a crook, and I hear one of my sisters married rich and now owns a gambling hall in Vegas. Good for her, I guess. There's definitely some family resemblance between Casimir and me, but he's way leaner and taller, and he's got a hawk nose. He looks a lot like some humanoid bird of prey altogether, but in a good way. He's a very handsome guy, which has led a bunch of unfortunate women to fall for him. He's got these pale green eyes that have already sent countless girls over the moon. That he's also a total asshole with unresolved mommy issues was something they had to find out the hard way. Lord knows how many times I've gotten calls and texts from weeping girls who'd look me up to get an answer as to why he'd disappeared. On top of that, he's got a bit of a gambling issue. Since I live and entertain the woods off of the money my siblings send me, that's been my problem occasionally as well. He provides me with a substantial amount on a regular basis, but sometimes he'll come around and need it back because he's made some debts again. Sometimes he comes up with other little side businesses, and then he'll spend money on that, but it's never worked out thus far. Bit of a waste for sure. He's still my favorite brother though. I like him for the person he is around me, not for how he acts when he's away. And the thing is, he'd do anything for me. One of my employees answered the door for him this morning, while I watched from my window. After ringing the doorbell, Casimir raked a hand through his slick-back blonde hair and readjusted his grip on the bouquet he was holding. Black callas. My favorites. Shortly after, I welcomed him into my room. After our mom had died and dad had moved to Cali, I'd taken over the master bedroom as it was more spacious. I'd thrown out every last piece of furniture and put up completely new wallpapers. In fact, I have long since renovated all the rooms in the house. A lot of them serve as break rooms for the employees nowadays, some with beds or cots so they can nap. "I still can't believe what you've done with the place," he remarked. "I keep expecting mom and dad's old room when I come here. Feels weird." "It was way too expensive," I admitted, plopping down in my armchair. "I kinda regret it. I should have left everything as it was. Would have saved me a fortune, but I felt like I needed to do this at the time." "How long are you staying for?" "Depends on how long that is gonna last," Casimir replied, waving his hand in front of me to indicate my altogether state. "You look like shit." "Thanks," I said dryly. "But like, why are you here?" "A friend of mine sent me this." He whipped out his phone and proceeded to show me several screenshots. I groaned, instantly feeling a headache coming on upon taking them in. They were of an online article. I won't drop any publisher names, but think BuzzFeed and the like. Someone had written about my woods, in the vein of a dark tourism recommendation, location, description, and everything. Now, before you get all panicky, this friend is actually one of the editors of that site, and he also has a share in it. When the author submitted it to him, he recognized it. I'm real glad I told him about where I'm from that one time. Who knew it'd pay off? Anyways, it was easy enough for him to let it disappear on my behalf. He helped me bribe the author never to write anything like it again, so not to worry. That's not the end of it, of course. I looked us up, and it turns out we're an insider tip with the horror nerds. So I figured I'd best go and visit my big sister. My big sister'll know what's what, or not. Maybe my big sister needs to catch a break. He leaned back in his seat, smiling as he patted down his shirt. "Aw man, you have no idea," I muttered. "It's been hell over here." So I told him everything, and now he's made himself at home in the guest bedroom for what's probably gonna be a couple weeks. He'd had enough foresight to take time off work to help me out. I expect he'll be able to find more hires in no time. Charming as he is, we're going to revise the guards' routes tonight and try to locate the blind spot where all these tourists keep coming in through. Aside from that, it's really just such a pleasure having someone around who I'm close with. I know I've said in the past that I'm a bit of an introvert, and I am, but it's different with CA's. His presence has always been a comfort to me, but earlier, when I was helping him unpack his suitcase, there was a moment when I seriously doubted his intelligence. Ted brought our old figure skates, both pairs. Holding mine up by the laces, I gave him a long, reproachful look. "Are you for real? I thought Mom threw them out." He shrugged. "I saved them." "Why? And don't tell me you want to have a go at it around the Twin Lakes again." "Why not?" Casimir replied, meeting my gaze with wide, innocent eyes. "You know exactly why? 'Cause you went for a dip yesterday. Once the surface is frozen, the old man's gonna be asleep all peaceful down there. He won't even know. We don't even have to go to his area." "No, because of the other thing." Gia's frowned. "Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. The whole dress debacle. I didn't think you were still hung up over Jashik." "What? That's not what I meant. You almost fucking died out there," I snapped. "Ooh." My brother threw his head back, palming his forehead. "Right. Yeah, of course. But I'm over that." I didn't know what to say. "I had to punch a girl's intestines for you." I gritted out, "Bear with me. It'll make sense later." "Yeah, and that's why I love you so much." I guess I'd best share the story behind this one. As you might have guessed from our conversation, CA's and I used to go ice skating on the Twin Lakes when we were younger, which, by the way, was before I started wearing my wedding dress. We knew it was kind of dangerous, and not only because the ice could break beneath us, but we didn't care. It had a growth spurt at 14 and already discovered early on that girls feel nice from the inside. He'd often ask my advice in matters of courtship, and weirdly enough, that had brought us closer together. We discovered we both liked ice skating, and we practiced it regularly with each other in the hopes of preparing ourselves to impress future wintertime dates. For years, we only went to actual ice rinks when our hobby came into season, but when I was 19 and he was 16, I suggested we use the lakes instead. We told Mom and Dad that it was because we wouldn't have to pay for tickets there and because it was basically right outside our door, but that was a lie. Casimir knew the real reason I wanted to skate in the woods. I'll share that soon too, but this isn't about me, so let's just say there was someone living there whom I sort of wanted to put on a show for. Our experience had always been thoroughly enjoyable and untainted. We were always careful not to be too loud or disruptive to the forest. We had that much sense even then. Nobody ever bothered us either. That one day in late January would change things though. The smaller of the lakes, the one we preferred, was a rigid frozen dance floor. Our blades had scraped the ice there countless times. We were talking quietly on our walk, strapping on our skates once we reached the spot and instantly busting out the big guns. We had already learned some figures and jumps, and we were pretty good for two self-taught kids. We soon noticed we'd forgotten to bring something to drink though, and we were way too thirsty to carry on without. Not wanting to cut our session short, I told CAs I'd run back home and fetch us something. He said he'd be fine waiting for me. Being fast on my feet, I managed to sprint to the house and return within a half hour. Upon my return, I found my brother grinning from ear to ear. Handing him one of the bottles I brought, I asked what had gotten him so tickled, but he wouldn't say. I should have known something was up right then and there, but I shrugged it off. We continued on with our skating, and went home before it got dark. Casimir was giggling to himself the entire time. Wood had wanted to go the day after that too. Casimir was particularly excited at the prospect. Having a habit of sleeping in on the weekends, I woke up around noon to find out from my mom that Casimir had already left for the lake around 2 hours ago. "Did he say anything else?" I inquired. "No. He seemed rather excited though," Mom replied, carefully cracking an egg into the frying pan she was standing over. "Sit down, honey. Your brother might have ran off on me, but you are going to stay for breakfast, if you can even call it that anymore." Assuring her I'd be back in a jiffy and apologizing profusely, I made a break for it before she could chase me down with a plate. I suddenly had an extremely bad feeling about all of this. I threw on my jacket in a hurry and headed out the door. Upon reaching the lake, I slowed down, sneaking around a little and hiding behind trees as I got closer. I soon spotted Casimir, sitting on the ridge by the lakeside, feet dangling just above the ice. He was laughing, and the cause of his delight was apparent. There was a girl sitting on his lap, tickling his chest, neck and armpits. So that's why he'd been so eager to get back here. He had probably met her the day before when I was away. She was completely naked, so quite obviously non-human, but the fun they were having seemed to be innocent enough. I didn't really care who my brother fraternized with, and more than a few forest dwellers I'd encountered were kind-natured and rather peaceful, so perhaps there wasn't actually cause for alarm. Casimir's giggling filled the air as he started curling up in the snow, the girl leaning over him. Not wanting to stick around and watch them make out, I turned around and went on my way back home. That's when I realized that CA's was laughing just a little too hard by then. It sounded a bit like he couldn't breathe. Frowning, I cast another glance at the pair. The girl was now holding him down, physically restraining him, and he was actually struggling. Something was off. Biting back my embarrassment, I emerged from the tree line, starting towards them across the ice. Neither of them noticed me at first. I was about to shout out to them, when I noticed something that made me stop in my tracks. The girl had her back turned to me, and while the whole of it had previously been covered by her long hair, this veil was now lifted when she leaned further down to bury her face against Casimir's shirt. Her hair shifted, revealing that her back was, for lack of a better term, lacking skin. My stomach twisted at the mere sight. Her spine lay bare, as did the ribs and red mass around them. I was pretty sure I could see her organs, pulsing, dripping red and pink flesh, the white shine of bone. I felt as though the ice was about to break beneath me, like I was falling. That girl looked like she was half corpse, cut open with surgical precision to reveal her insides. An actual fucking Mavka. Casimir was gasping for air at this point. His ragged cries tore me from my rigidity, and I stomped over to the two of them, incoherently screaming at the top of my lungs. I grabbed the girl by the shoulders, tossing her off of my brother and throwing myself on top of her. Her face pressed into the snow. She could only sputter and whine, pulse thrumming in my ears. I summoned all my courage as I forcefully shoved my fingers into the spaces between her ribs. I dug my nails in mercilessly, trying to somehow get a grip on the bone. "It'll rip it out," I screeched, ignoring the vomit rising in my throat. "If you ever hurt him again, I'll rip it the fuck out." The Mavka let out a scream of fear and agony, pushing me off in a panicked frenzy, rolling onto my back. I could see her taking off into the woods, naked feet slapping the frozen ground. TA's helped me to my feet, a haunted look in his eyes. As soon as I was standing, he hugged me so tightly he nearly cut off my airflow. I took him home and we didn't speak of the incident ever again. I never encountered the Mavka after that. I guess I scared her off. There's still the Rusalki who dwell in hiding by the lakeside, though, just another reason to be careful. I would venture back there regularly, Not to meet the predatory man-hating water ladies, of course. Sure, my brother was a horny idiot in his own way, but let's just say so was I. Back to the present, I suppose. Ciaz and I are currently taking a break from trying to solve the surveillance issue. We haven't come to any fully formed conclusions yet, but he's actually planted an uncomfortable idea in my mind. If the guards' routes have been working all this time and it's only now that things are going wrong, then there's a possibility that all these internet strangers are getting tipped off and let in. And if that's true, then it has to be one of my employees doing it. I think that when I said that I loved my brother, I kind of forgot how obnoxious he really is. He's a goddamn grown-up with a job, a house, and about a dozen illegitimate kids to pay child support for, but when he's with me, he acts like he's a little boy again, and I don't mean that in a good way. After starting the day by pissing his name in the snow outside the front door, he served me scrambled eggs spiced with pepper and sugar, left a spoonful of marmalade in one of my boots, and kept banging on the bathroom wall from the other side while I was trying to take a dump. But at least we're making some progress on the whole trespassing thing. It's impossible to round up all of the workers, seeing as those who are currently on site have to constantly rotate around their assigned parts of the forest. Keeping them from doing their job would be utterly counterproductive, so we decided to stop by each of them on their rounds. This would mean a lot of walking for the two of us, but we were up for it. It's gotten even colder overnight, CA's remarked. Aren't you gonna take a jacket? You know I can't, I replied gloomily, tugging on one of my white fur-trimmed gloves. The only other thing protecting me from the chill was the little fluffy cape attached to the particular wedding dress I was wearing that day. No point in complaining. Even after all this time, my brother gave me a deprecating laugh. Man, Jacek really dealt you a bad hand, didn't he? I don't want to talk about Jacek, I said curtly, my voice flat and monotone. Let's just get going. Ciaz merely shook his head, but at least he kept his mouth shut as we got on our way. Marching through the snow together, I almost felt like we were kids again, like I'd just have to turn around and Jem and Marion would be right behind us. I've missed this, Casimir suddenly remarked, a wistful earnestness in his voice. I almost started at his tone. This wasn't what I was used to from him. Me too, I admitted hesitantly. I've tried to find other things to make up for it, but nothing ever quite compares, he went on, staring down at his boots. There was nothing else I could say. For 10 minutes or so, all we could hear was the sound of snow crunching beneath the soles of our shoes. Finally, we came across Fergus patrolling the edge of the forest adjacent to the red meadow. He was sipping hot cocoa from his thermos and greeted us with a slightly drowsy smile. When I asked him how it'd been, he said he'd had trouble sleeping but insisted he was okay. Now I trust him. Gus has been working for us for ages. He wouldn't rat us out, but perhaps he knew something. Why would anybody make our location public? He thought aloud upon being presented with the question. Money, Casimir suggested readily. I reckon one of your coworkers is taking bribes. That's sort of depressing to think about. I mean, the guys and I hang out all the time. Well, I'm gonna keep an eye out, but that's about all I can tell you at the moment. We quickly said our goodbyes and went on our way to catch the next guard, Jose, another senior member on our staff. He didn't know anything either, but we still stayed to chat a little, and he seemed to be genuinely concerned. We went on to look up the others too, but to cut it short, we got nothing out of them. CA said that it was a good thing would at least spread the word and made it known that we were suspecting one of them to be sabotaging us. Still, we needed answers, and I had an idea of where to get them. There's a small bathhouse on our property, right next to the main building. I believe my great-great-great-grandfather constructed it. It consists of a changing room and a steaming room, and it's actually really lovely, though none of us have used it in ages. I pay a lady to take care of the sauna nonetheless though. Like many places on our estate, it's not as uninhabited as it might seem at first glance. It's a special place. I was actually born there. Hell, maybe even conceived too. But that's a little more unlikely. My mother insisted that it was a place of great spiritual value and danger, but she never used it for any of the activities she claimed could be conducted there. That's not all though. When I was 16, I decided I wanted to go for a steam there. Mom was practically the only one to ever really use the bathhouse, and she'd been quite enthusiastic for us to try it out together. I had stayed far away from the place up to that point. It had always kind of creeped me out, what with all the talk of supernatural energy, but I was intrigued as well. And when I was 16, I figured it was time to check it out. Besides, steaming could be nice. So I went inside with Mom on a day just as cold and wintry as this one. Both of us were wearing crosses around our necks, which Mom said would have to leave at the door. This rather confused me, but I readily left one of my boots outside for us, and we placed our necklaces inside. We undressed in the changing room and each grabbed a bath broom on our way in. The bath brooms were simple bundles of birch twigs. Their leaves were already strewn all over the bathhouse floor, but when I asked Mom why we didn't just buy sponges or some actual stuff for the bathhouse, she only said that it was better to stick with natural materials sometimes. We'd fired up the sauna and were sitting in the steaming room. Nothing much happened, so I was actually quite at ease. The room had heated up quickly. It was a lot more intense than your normal sauna level of hot though. Still, I found it rather enjoyable, and my mother appeared to be perfectly used to it. We didn't talk much, save for the occasional quip or remark. "Why don't the others ever come here?" I inquired. "This is kinda nice." "Dad says he doesn't like the heat, but I think he's just scared," Mom replied, idly playing with her bath broom. "I'm glad you aren't. What's there to be afraid of? Sure, it's a pretty old building, but oh, it's not the building, it's the spirit." She gave me a meaningful smile. "We'll talk later. Let's keep it down for now, shall we?" That admittedly kind of freaked me out. It wouldn't have been the first time I'd encountered a supernatural entity, but just because you're used to something does not mean you should lose your respect for it. "So we're not alone right now?" I asked quietly. Mom grinned, shaking her head. Leaning over to me, she whispered, "He's hiding behind the benches." Despite the heat, her words sent a cold chill up my spine. "I think I want to leave," I muttered, rising to my feet. Mom looked a bit disappointed, but didn't say anything to stop me. Just as I was heading for the doorway, I felt something sharp and pointy raking down my back, painfully tearing into my skin. I let out a sharp scream, spinning around only to find that Mom was still in her seat, frozen as a statue, staring at me with wide eyes. "What the fuck was that?" I whined. I could feel blood trickling down my lower back. My mother, freeing herself from her rigor, rushed over to hug me, casting an accusatory gaze into the room. "That was totally uncalled for," she shouted, her anger directed at somebody I couldn't see. "Come on now, honey. If the miserable old grouch doesn't want company, we'll just be on our way now," she told me, taking my hand and pulling me out into the changing room. Just as we were about to set foot through the doorway, we were stopped by a gush of scalding hot water hitting our backs. Both Mom and I cried out and spun around, just in time to glimpse a frail, hunched-over figure disappearing behind the benches. My heart was racing in my chest when the air suddenly filled with a strange, uncanny gibbering. It sounded like someone talking backwards, but really fast and in an eerie, low, brittle voice. Whatever lived inside that bathhouse, what angered it. "Let's just go," Mom squeaked, sounding like a little girl. She didn't have to tell me twice. We didn't take the time to dress, merely grabbed our clothes and sprinted, barefoot and naked, through the snow back to the safety of our house. My father, who had been watching us through the window, was laughing his ass off at us. "Care to explain?" I gasped, hopping around on the living room carpet as I was trying to put on my pants with shaking, frozen fingers. My mother huffed, finally sticking her head through the opening of the sweatshirt shed been fighting with. "That was the bannock. He moved into the bathhouse after my great-great-grandfather built it. Guess he was having a bad day. Though the scratching is something he's done before. Grandpa always said if you take a steam around Christmas time and the bannock scratches you, it means the new year is going to be a bad one. But I don't really care, you know. You're my daughter, and the old skunk better keep his hands to himself around you." "But the scratching thing, is that like an actual prediction?" I asked, still kind of shaken. "Oh, I don't know, but I wouldn't trust the bannock anyways. He's such a moody, dumb geezer. You know, he invites the woodland demons to bathe with him at night. That's why he doesn't want any crosses or religious items in there." "Shouldn't we see to it that he's, like, appeased?" I inquired cautiously. Mom snorted. "I won't. Let him rage in there if he wants to. He can burn down the bathhouse for all I care. I'm not going back there anytime soon after this." That same night, I snuck outside with a bucket of water. It had a pink block of soap swimming around in it, and seeing as I had stupidly filled it all the way up to the brim, I had to take great care not to spill anything. I had tucked a bunch of fir branches under my arm, increasing the difficulty of my endeavor. Once I finally reached the sauna, I sat everything down in the snow to knock on the door. "Hello?" I called out softly, trying to keep my voice from trembling. The bathhouse was lying in complete and utter silence. If there were any spirits inside, they were having a really quiet gathering. "I'm sorry to disturb. It's Fiona, from before. I've come to apologize. Sure, I didn't actually believe I'd done something wrong, but it was best to take the humble road with beings like this one. I knew that even back then, The Bannock most likely didn't care about my standpoint. Ever so slowly, the door to the building swung open. Total darkness was waiting behind it, and I was reminded of a huge bear opening its mouth. While this felt like a prompt to step inside, I refrained from doing so, instead placing the bucket and the branches atop the stoop. To this day, I believe the creature inside must have been able to hear my heartbeat. That's how loud it seemed to me. I almost jumped when a bony arm with saggy, wrinkled, pale skin reached out from the pitch-black opening to pull my offerings inside. To my relief, the Bannock didn't shut the door immediately. Taking note of this opportunity, I summoned all my courage and spoke up again. I was wondering if that was a sign you gave me earlier. Is the new year really going to be bad for us? For a moment, everything was silent. Then the strange gibbering started up again. Something about that noise was deeply unnerving to me. My skin crawling. I considered turning back and making a run for the house, when I suddenly realized that I could actually make out certain words amidst the jumble. Particularly for you. I swallowed, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach like a cold, heavy liquid. What's going to happen to me? I don't know exactly. Am I gonna die? I whispered shakily. Just a part of you. Please, sir, tell me what you mean, I implored, growing desperate. Maybe it was the fear in my voice, or the fact that I'd brought him those gifts, but something appeared to have moved him enough to beckon me closer in that rattling, breathy voice of his. I hesitantly crept up the stoop, crouching down in front of the half-open door. Do you promise to keep up this bathhouse? Will you see to it that it is clean and bring me soap and water? If that's what you want, I said slowly, then hold your head and receive my gift. With that, he pressed a gnarled finger to my forehead. His skin was damp and soft, leaving a wet spot between my eyebrows. This will not enable you to see the future, but it will help you see imminent danger when it's hiding in plain sight. It's not infallible, and you might yet fall victim to your own naivety if you're not careful, but I'm sure you'll find it an improvement to your own weak senses. His arm withdrew. The door swung shut, and I was left alone in the nightly darkness, the only sound remaining being the whistling winter wind. Over time, something akin to a business relationship has developed from this odd encounter. The Bannock appreciates the effort I put into the bathhouse despite hardly using it myself. At night, I can often hear voices from inside, carried over to the main building by the breeze. The Bannock's gift is the reason I could tell there was a disturbance in the aura of that one cryptid hunter I met. Of course, it's merely a heightened instinct and not at all reliable, but it's something. When I started wearing my wedding dress, he gave me another blessing, namely my heightened tolerance of uncomfortable temperatures. CA's knows there's a bunch of entities I'm on relatively good terms with, so he wasn't too surprised when I said we should go and consult the creepy old guy who lives in our sauna. Not that he's looking forward to it either. I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. I think the mood I'm in today can be described as strained optimism. My brother has somehow managed to get some locals from the town over interested in coming by for a job interview, so there's a chance we're gonna have some more hires soon. We went to talk to the Bannock last night. TAEs was super nervous, but when the spirit proved to be supportive, he was pleasantly surprised. This time the little old humanoid was even outgoing enough to show himself. He's quite the droll sight, what with his wide mouth and the long beard that he stumbles over every time he gets up. After introducing my little brother, we sat down together, the Bannock crossing his skinny legs on one of the benches. I cleared my throat, speaking up in what I hope to be a steady and open tone. I'll be frank. We're here because there's something we need your help with. So before we ask for it, is there anything we can do for you? The old man grinned and shook his head. When he spoke, CAs and I had to concentrate to make out the words. You have been keeping me perfectly content in these four walls, my dear. That's good to hear. Now, I've been faced with a bit of a problem lately. I know all about the issue already. A mutual friend of ours told me everything about it when he came to bathe last night. You don't mean the wood demon? Oh yes. I wouldn't exactly call the Leshy a friend, so is there anything you can tell us? Someone's been playing you false, the spirit replied, idly combing his beard with his fingers. That much you must know by now. Yeah, we figured, Casimir remarked glumly. Can you tell us who? Not exactly, I'm afraid. I only see bits and pieces of the future, not full visions, and not of the presents, but I do have something to share with you. I leaned forward. Honestly, I'm glad for any advice whatsoever right now. Oh yeah, we're desperate, Ciaz added, nodding eagerly. Go to the old black mill, you'll find answers there. I froze up like someone had poured a bucket of icy water over me. The black mill? Ciaz repeated. eyes darting from the spirit to me. "Isn't that where Jacek used to live?" "I don't want to talk about Jacek," I hissed. The Bannock let out a wheezing laugh that quickly turned into a coughing fit. "I'm aware that something happened at the mill, Fiona. You wouldn't believe how many visions I had of you at the time. I don't need to know the details to understand that you made a major fool of yourself. You acted like that sixth sense I presented you with was taking a vacation, along with all your other higher faculties." I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. "I don't want to talk about Jacek," I reiterated with stern emphasis. "Well, you'll simply have to, if you want to secure these woods. And doesn't the Leshy have your word on that?" The old man cocked his head. "Remind me what hell do if you don't follow through." Here it comes. The promise I made to the wood demon. No use in keeping it to myself anymore. I have until the end of the 12 nights between the years to fix this mess. If after that another unauthorized trespasser makes their way into the forest somehow, the Leshy, my voice trailed off as I lifted my head to meet the spirit's gaze. Hell have me. I guess hell dragged me to hell, or wherever his leafy ass is from, and I'd have to be his servant for all eternity. Or hell eat me, like he did the other guy. I felt weirdly disconnected from these possible outcomes when I listed them to my brother. "Why the fuck would you tell him he could do that?" Casimir sounded incredulous. "He saved my life. He'd have gobbled me up on the spot if I had denied him." "I know you're worried, wench, but let me assure you the Leshy does not want you to fail, and he'd take no pleasure in punishing you." The Bannock chimed in. "I don't know about that," I muttered. "Take my word for it. I can't tell you why, but he needs you to succeed." We said our goodbyes on that note, concluding that we would head for the Black Mill the next morning. The Black Mill used to be a relatively safe place back when Jacek was living there. Now that it's abandoned though, there's bound to be some unpleasant creatures squatting inside. I normally go into the woods unarmed. Weapons are an unnecessary provocation, but today I decided that both CAs and I would be taking handguns and cleansing salt. We were walking side by side in silence, any attempts on my end to strike up a conversation remaining unsuccessful. When I finally asked him why he was giving me the cold shoulder, he merely grumbled something about me digging my own grave by submitting myself to the wood demon. What was I supposed to do? I demanded. "Hey, I'll be fine. We'll fix this. The Leshy will be happy and everything is going to be just perfect." I patted him on the shoulder a little too hard, and we continued on our way, sloshing through the snow. The Twin Lakes looked so peaceful. They had frozen over completely sometime during the last few days, a thick layer of ice having congealed them to shining, stiff mirrors. I could have mentioned the gristmill already when I recounted CA's encounter with the Mavka, but I really didn't want to think about that place. The old mill is a decrepit ruin by the side of the smaller Twin Lake. Technically, it has never truly worked, not by natural means. There was no stream around that flowed strongly or quickly enough to turn the water wheel. When Jacek had been living here, the mill had nevertheless been in constant use. When we laid eyes on it today, it rather made the impression of a structure built to rot, a place that had never seen life before and never would. Its black walls and roof were riddled with holes and blades were missing from the water wheel, which was hovering a few feet above the frozen surface of the lake. "Man, this place is giving me the creeps," TAs murmured. "It's changed a lot, hasn't it? Did you ever hear from Jacek again after, the thing?" "No, and I don't want to talk about Jacek." "You keep saying that," my brother grunted. "So you fucked up. What's the big deal?" "I'm not you. I didn't make a habit of it," I shot back, and CS threw me an irritated glance. Before he could respond, however, a howl sliced through the winter air, disrupting the relative silence. We both stopped in our tracks. It had undoubtedly come from the old gristmill. "Oh dear God," Casimir muttered, instinctively reaching for my hand. I allowed him to grasp it, drawing myself up and puffing my chest out, summoning my courage. Suddenly it was as though we were kids again, two solitary figures, soft and vulnerable before the ominous structure looming above us. Casimir and I slowly proceeded towards the building. Despite its state, the black paint on the walls was clinging to them as strongly as ever. Rounding the corner, we found that most of the windows had been smashed in. Even more unsettling were the scratch marks around the frames. They couldn't have possibly been made by an animal. Judging from how high up they were, the creature must have stood at easily the same height as my brother. I had to let go of Casimir's hand for a second to wipe off the sweat lacing my palm. We slowly made our way over to the front door, finding it barred. "Guess the window will do," I mumbled. "Can't we figure out what's been howling in there before we go inside?" "And how do we do that?" I retorted. walking up the closest window and starting to pluck away the glass shards that were protruding from the frame like teeth. I was nearly done when another one of those hair-raising wails rang out from the inside. Casimir jumped, and I admittedly almost suffered a heart attack myself, but I hid my unease, every bit the big sister. I slowly maneuvered my body and dressed through the relatively small opening before gesturing to Casimir that it was safe to follow. Not much was left of what had once been Jasek's furniture. The charred remains of an armchair and a table told a story of smoke and fire. Big dark spots on the walls indicated the places where the flames had been licking at them. "What happened here?" Casimir whispered. Sake was angry when he went away. He probably went pyro on his things, I explained. The building itself can't be destroyed entirely. That's probably the only reason it's still standing. Is that something he'd do? Absolutely. Come on, there's gotta be more. We started poking around the rubble, moving about as quietly as possible, knowing very well that we were not alone. We kept nervously glancing over at the broken down staircase in the corner that led up to the second floor. Half of it was caved in, presumably because of the fire, so we wouldn't be able to access the upper story of the mill. Occasionally, we'd hear the floorboards creaking above us, the sound of someone or something pacing to and fro. Each little noise sent a surge of fear through our bodies, but we kept our mouths shut, masterfully managing to stifle gasps and startled screams. It was Kays who found the trail camera. He picked it out of a dusty pile of burnt something or other in the corner. It was broken for sure, contorted and covered in scratches and alarmingly deep teeth marks. It had nearly been bitten in half. Something must have torn it off wherever it had been mounted, most likely the same creature that had taken up residence on the upper floor. "Shit," I whispered, giving my brother an approving nod. "That's gotta be it." "You sure? It's like super banged up. I don't think we can get any footage from it." "We don't have to," I said breathily. "What? Do you think I put up trail cams around the woods?" "Hell no. Whoever did this has got to be the snitch, and this is probably not even the only cam. We'll show this to the employees. Look for other cams. We can really do something with this." "Okay." An enthusiastic smile of pride began to spread on my brother's face. "Okay, cool, what now?" I frowned, pointing at the staircase. "Let's bail." I didn't have to tell him twice. Casimir headed straight for the window, squeezing through and beckoning for me to join him on the other side. Of course, my retreat was, as per usual, a little slower than his. Struggling with my skirt, I tried to duck through the opening when my stupid fucking cape got caught inside. Groaning, I leaned back to discover that it had somehow gotten snagged up on a rusty old nail sticking out of the wall. I started tugging on it, but that didn't work with the glove on, so I had to pull it off first. "Hurry!" Chaos hissed. "Jasek's house kinda doesn't want me to leave, I think," I answered, forcefully tugging on the fabric. Finally it tore, and I was sent tumbling out the window, cutting myself on either the nail or a glass shard in the process. I cursed under my breath, but the thump of my fall had not gone unnoticed. The same howl we'd heard before pierced the air. Floorboards started creaking and cracking inside the mill, accompanied by the sound of fast, heavy footfalls dashing down the broken stairs. "Oh shit. Okay, go, go, go. Don't look back," I yelled, pushing my brother forth as we began staggering through the snow back into the direction we'd come from. Casimir tossed me the busted camera as he got out his handgun. Another howl, then the sound of wood splintering. This fucking thing was following us. Caes was smart enough not to use his weapon right away. There was still a chance we could lose this beast, whatever it was among the trees. Things were starting to look dire though. Soon enough we could hear it running up behind us, panting and growling. Both my brother and I were starting to grow slower, our breaths coming out shallow and ragged. Casimir was red-faced and wild-eyed, struggling to resist the urge to look over his shoulder. "It's catching up," he cried out. "Keep going. We can make it." We totally couldn't. Not at that rate. Another blood-curdling howl, then, strangely enough, a bark. I recognized that sound. I came to a skittering halt, and so did the creature. Casimir had stopped a few feet ahead of me, screaming at me what the hell I was doing. "Don't shoot," I warned him, raising my hands. "It's okay. I think this is kind of a misunderstanding." Slowly, I turned to face the entity, letting out a soft gasp upon laying eyes on it. It was a black, shaggy wolf dog the size of a man. One of its eyes was missing, as was part of its ear. It was only skin and bones, and it reeked like a whole-ass sewer. "Hey, I know you," I said softly, taking a hesitant step towards it. "Do you remember me?" The dog sat down in the snow, lowering its dripping snout and proceeding to press it to my neck, sniffing fiercely. I stood still as a statue, my eyes shut, trying to ignore my mounting panic. The beast could rip my throat out right then and there, but deep down I knew it wouldn't. Finally it drew away, huffing as it got to its feet, or rather paused, and turned to trot off. "Wait, ain't you starving?" I called after it. "I have food at home, I could." The dog ignored me, walking away with its head held high. I pressed my lips together, feeling the sting of rejection. "I thought Jacek took his dog with him when he left," I remarked. Casimir just looked at me in pure bewilderment. "That's what that was. It's waiting for its master." Oh, my brother gazed after the creature. Am I supposed to be relieved now? 10 years. It's been 10 years, and that dog's still waiting for him. I sighed. "You think it'll let me feed it? Did it seem angry to you? 'Cause I think it's still angry at me." Kiaz shrugged. "I'd sure be mad. You're the reason it's human up and left, aren't you?" "Wait, was Jacek human?" "I don't want to talk about Jacek. Let's just go home." Most of my younger employees are sort of afraid of me, which isn't something I ever wanted to foster. It's just because of the wedding dress. They probably think I'm either secretly a ghost or a little nuts. I find that regrettable because I'm a really nice person and I deserve to have friends, for fuck's sake. I like being alone, I do, but if the only people talking to you on a regular basis are a flesh-eating tree monster and a naked old man living in your sauna, you're bound to start overthinking your life choices. At least with my little brother by my side, I know I'm not all alone in this. We've had a pretty eventful day here, actually. We spent the early hours traipsing around in the snow outside looking for more cameras, and we found 2. They were well hidden, and I would have probably never noticed them if we hadn't been searching for them specifically. They were mainly located in the deeper parts of the forest, but leaning towards the western edge, so we figured they had to have been put up by a guard assigned to that area. We have 3 people on staff for that route, and they're always rotating shifts. We called in a worker who was currently off the clock and didn't mind a few extra bucks to cover their section while we had them gathered in the main building for a little talk. The guards in question, Ira, Tom and Clara, were sitting on my living room couch, all looking a bit worried. I tried to focus on their aura, but nothing seemed to be amiss at first glance. TA's was standing in the corner with his back against the wall, arms crossed in front of his chest. I gave him a nod and he stepped forward, picking up the plastic bag on the floor beside him and proceeding to empty it on the ottoman. 3 trail cameras came clattering out. We had already removed their SD cards. Silence. None of the 3 seemed to be willing to look me in the eye, let alone answer my question. I could only hope that this time the unease I evoked in some of my workers would motivate one of them to come clean. As you know, we've been having a bit of a security issue as of late. Seems like somebody's been trying to benefit from the woods financially, with surprisingly little regard for human life. I'm paying you guys to keep this place safe and hidden, and one of you has been doing the exact opposite. Clasping my hands, I made an effort to look like an authoritarian boss. You're gonna have to tell me who. You people disgust me, Casimir spat out in an unnaturally deep and gruff voice. Oh dear God. You don't know what you're doing, he went on, sounding like the bad cop from a movie. People have died because of you, and yet here you are, pretending like nothing's wrong. So what's it gonna be? Either you speak up and we talk this out, and maybe my sister will have mercy on you, or you keep quiet and all 3 of you will face the consequences. Fuck's sake, he was making it sound like a death threat. What the hell was he doing? I tried motioning for him to shut up, but he didn't react. People are dead. Lives have been lost because of you. You're scum, you hear me? I took a quick step forward, covering my brother's mouth and pulling him aside. The 3 guards turned to look after us in confusion as I dragged him into the adjacent room. What are you doing? I hissed. 2 of those guys likely don't even know what we're talking about. I was hoping they'd keep working here after this whole thing is over, and I'm not keen on a lawsuit. I just wanted to help, Sage replied innocently. Less of that, please. I returned into the living room by myself. Safe to say my 3 suspects didn't feel all too cooperative after this, and I basically just apologized and told them to go back to whatever they've been doing. Now we were going to try and see if we could get answers from the cameras somehow, but after I found that note on my dresser this afternoon, I'm not sure I should proceed with my investigation anymore. It was there when I got up from my impromptu nap. Kaz. If you don't leave this be, I'm gonna kill the white rabbit. The dread I felt upon reading these words was near paralyzing. For a moment, all I could do was stand there, mouth agape, clutching the piece of paper with trembling fingers. My throat had gone bone dry, but I managed to grit out my brother's name. He was there in a heartbeat and only had to take one look at the note to tell what was wrong. He instantly pulled me into a hug, pressing my cheek against his chest. "No one's gonna kill the rabbit," he said softly. "We'll fix this. We'll figure out who's been playing us, and then we'll get it back. Think of it this way, it's a great opportunity. You haven't been this close to finding the rabbit in ages." He had a point. Part of me had already given up on it altogether. Now you're probably kind of confused. Nobody except myself and those close to me could ever possibly understand why this message terrified me so. Bear with me, I'll try to explain. It's not like you're unfeeling and emotionless without it, but it will all seem a lot duller and tamer than before. You'll often find yourself feeling weirdly disconnected from your surroundings, your own body even, for the soul often acts as a bridge between your consciousness and your physical form. You'll still be able to feel grief and happiness, but it will never be the same as it was when your soul was still inside you. It will all feel indescribably surreal and just off. Something's always going to be missing, even outwardly. First, a couple things about the human soul. The soul is contrary to popular belief, separated from our consciousness. At night when we sleep, it sometimes leaves our body to roam free and wander around, most often in the shape of an animal or an insect. The animal your soul presents as doesn't have anything to do with you as a person. It more so symbolizes a hidden or suppressed desire you might have buried somewhere in the back of your mind. Normally the soul returns before you wake up. Trouble arises when it doesn't. Your soul doesn't define you. You can live without it, but it is a part of you. When it's gone, you can tell. It leaves a hole somewhere inside you, and let me assure you that you're going to miss it like a phantom limb. Your eyes will look rather lifeless to others. Now, there can be a lot of reasons your soul isn't coming back to you. Maybe it got lost on one of its journeys. Maybe it's just tired of your shit, or maybe something happened to it. When I was 16, going on 17, we acquired an unwanted house guest. Mom could tell it was a haunting from the very first time we heard the thumping down in the basement at night. She was sitting on my bed with me. We had been immersed in a game of cards just a moment ago. "Did you hear that?" I asked her. "No way, not broken in. The doors are locked, right? You think someone's broken in?" "Yeah," she said quietly, her eyes darting around the room as she drew closer to me. We listened closely, only to hear a dull clatter that sounded like items being knocked off a shelf. The noise was followed by a rhythmic banging, like somebody was bashing the end of a broomstick against the basement ceiling. "And Mia, I'm not taking this shit. I want to sleep. Go downstairs and deal with it," Dad told her sternly. Dad dropped in shortly after, asking if we had any idea what that ruckus was. My mother merely grinned. "Why, I guess it's some kind of ghost?" "No," giving me a short nod, and pointing at the cards in my hand, she added, "Your turn, baby." "No," Mom shook her head. "What?" "First off, don't speak to me like that in front of my daughter. If this bothers you, take care of it yourself." "You coward," Mom replied nonchalantly, raising a haughty brow at him. She had become great at getting under his skin over the last couple years. Now he's pissed. "Ah, well," Mom smiled sweetly. "Where were we?" Dad made a face like a fish gasping for air. Without saying another word, he turned on his heel. We heard him slam the door to the master bedroom seconds later. "Mom, are you for real? There's a ghost downstairs. I'm scared now." I couldn't believe I had to explain this to her. "But there's no need for that. Like you said, it's downstairs. Not here." Well, what if it comes upstairs?" I lay wide awake that night. You'd think with everything I'd already seen up to that point, I would have lost some of my apprehensions, but I find that when it comes to the supernatural, it's only healthy to stay cautious. I still get the shivers even now when something goes bump in the night, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Well, worry about that when it happens. The noises in the basement didn't cease, and each one made me twitch and shudder. Somehow, this was much worse than the door slamming Yule lad. It felt distinctly more disconcerting. That's the thing about poltergeists, Sonny. If you take them seriously, you're giving them what they want. Just don't let it get to you, she told me. The following day at the breakfast table, I was so puffed up and sleep deprived that I couldn't swallow a single bite. I begged and pleaded with my mother to somehow take care of the problem, but all she had to offer were pointless words of reassurance. The following night was even worse though. The noises had moved up onto the ground floor, and whatever was causing them had absolutely wrecked our kitchen and living room. The trash can had been knocked over. Books were lying on the floor beneath their shelf. Plates and glasses had been shattered. On top of that, my younger siblings were now just as terrified as me, so Dad became a lot more insistent about it. Mom finally agreed to check out the goings-on, asking me if I wanted to stay up with her and wait for the ghost. I wouldn't be able to sleep anyways, so I figured I might as well. We prepared cleansing salt and sage, which we would utilize to purify the room once the spirit would appear. My mother insisted that she was the one who'd deploy these defenses as I was too inexperienced. She squeezed herself into one of the kitchen cupboards. Short and slim as she was, she actually fit in entirely. I hid under the sofa, legs stretched out and belly pressed to the ground. We waited for what felt like an eternity, a giddy kind of excitement keeping us both awake. I was still just as afraid, but something about secretly expecting the haunting to happen was really thrilling. It did happen, and none too late. Around midnight was when the first pots and pans started clanging together. My heart rate quickened instantly, and I dug my teeth into my lower lip. The air in the room suddenly seemed to jitter as ragged breaths and an eerie wheezing sound rang out from the kitchen. My entire body tensed in fearful anticipation. I was filled with a nervous energy that made me feel like I was about to explode. The legs started dragging closer, and that's when I realized that they ended in big, pointy chicken claws instead of feet. This was definitely not a ghost. Floorboards creaked as footsteps started moving towards the living room area. I had expected Mom to use her cleansing salt at this point, so I was a bit confused as to why she was letting the ghost proceed. I admittedly couldn't see very much from my hiding place, but I could tell it definitely wasn't my mother coming out of her spot. The steps sounded weird and wrong. Peeking out into the darkness, I could make out a pair of unnaturally thin legs moving about in the room. They were extremely unsettling to look at, all gnarled and bony. Perhaps we'd been wrong about this entity. Granted, I'd never seen a poltergeist before, but this was a much more physical form than I'd imagined one to possess. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead as my mind started racing with thoughts about what could have possibly found its way into our home. Mom had most likely already realized we'd made a mistake, and that was why she was staying in hiding. The creature started stomping around so heavily that the porcelain on the shelf started jangling. The thing began to jump all across the floor, kicking down chairs and eventually flipping our table. The bangs and crashes were loud enough to make me wince each time, and its hopping made the floor shudder beneath me. It was a hunchbacked, haggard old woman with a large chicken beak smack in the middle of her ghastly face. I cried out, but she was upon me within the blink of an eye, grabbing me by the collar and forcefully pulling me to my feet. Suddenly I heard a sharp scream of fury. My mother had come tumbling out of the cupboard and was now charging at the creature from the side, trying to pry her away from me. I was too afraid to keep watching, opting to press my eyes shut and block out the noise instead. I really shouldn't have done that, for I didn't realize in time that the creature had moved behind my sofa. Before I knew it, I felt long fingers gripping my ankles. I let out a sharp cry of fear as I was dragged across the floor, out from under the sofa, and flung into the air. I landed painfully on my back, whimpering as I struggled to push myself back up, only to find myself facing a grotesque-looking entity. "Get your hands off my daughter, you dirty old crone," she yelled, reaching right up to the monster's eyes as if to gouge them out. "Get out of my house, Kikimura," Mom said in a steely, low voice. The creature let go of me and staggered backwards. My mother rushed right to my side, wrapping both arms around me as she glared daggers at this bizarre-looking thing. For a few seconds, all was silent. The old woman let out something akin to a giggle, a high-pitched, uncanny sound that sent chills down my spine. Then she disappeared, simply vanishing into thin air. "You mean she's not going away?" I asked. My mother's chest was heaving. "This isn't over," she mumbled. "It wasn't a threat, it was a statement. Worse. Everyone, wake up," she shouted, raising her voice as she began stomping up the stairs. "Honey, get me a marker or something." "That's no poltergeist," Mom explained, rubbing her eyes. "It's a Kikimora, the domestic kind. Wants to drive people insane to chase them out of their houses. When she's in a really bad mood, she'll try to eat their souls." "So?" I asked as I helped her up from her seat by the staircase. My mother ordered us to draw crosses on the other sides of our pillows, then sent us back to sleep while staying up to guard the upper floor. I came to relieve her from duty an hour later, after I'd calmed down and taken a little power nap. "Yeah, don't worry. So long as you're asleep in bed, you'll be fine." Mom had already explained the whole soul thing to me, so I knew to be frightened. The crosses on our pillows, will they protect us? I took her seat and started waiting. There hadn't been any noises since our face-to-face encounter earlier. Maybe the Kikimora was hiding somewhere, watching me. The thought alone sent chills down my spine. As the minutes seeped by, I was getting increasingly tired. It wasn't easy fending off sleep. I tried to recall the image of the creepy old chicken woman, and just when I thought my mind was finally occupied enough to stay clear, I heard a sharp scream and my eyes flew open. Wait, had I been dozing this entire time? There was this white rabbit, a ghost rabbit. It was just hopping along, and then this chicken woman came and she tried to catch it. They were over there, and I was right here, but they didn't notice me. I didn't have much time to ponder that, though. My little sister Julia was standing in the hallway, a plastic cup lying in a pool of milk at her feet. She was pointing at the window across from us, her mouth agape. My parents came running to check on us, and immediately Julia started to babble. The poor thing was scared out of her mind. A ghost rabbit, my father repeated. Mom had gone very pale. Yeah, Julia went on, but the rabbit jumped out the window just in time, right on through, like it was open. My mother slowly began walking over to me. "Honey, did you fall asleep?" she inquired. In the week that followed, we tried to chase away the Kikimora by hanging various charms around the house. She stopped bothering us eventually, but the ghost rabbit never returned. My mom kept telling me my soul would one day find its way back to me, but it's been so long since then. I actually started convincing myself that I'm alright, and most days I'm actually unaware of the disconnect, but even so, something is missing and I've always known it. I didn't reply, merely stared up at her with wide eyes. Something's different. Back to the present. Kaz and I have had a long talk, and we've decided that if there's a chance I could have my soul back, we need to take it. We need help though, from someone who not only knows their way around the forest, but around souls and all that spiritual stuff. And to my great dismay, I know only one person who fits that scheme. Jasek of the Old Black Mill. All millers are proficient in the dark arts. Often they're also in the direct employ of the devil. Now, that's a fact. And if anyone tells you differently, they're either talking out of their ass or they're a miller themselves. Some millers only study black magic to ward off the water spirits and protect their mill and river from harmful influences. Others have sworn themselves to the beast entirely. That's why millers are dangerous folk. You can never tell with them. I knew all that, and it didn't stop me. Also, y'all should know going into this that I'm about to talk about some major horniness on my part. I was younger, don't judge or do. I don't really care. Jasek came to our house one autumn day, not long after I turned 19. I remember sitting out on the balcony, drinking in the golden sunlight weaving through the red leaves of the trees outside our house. Casimir was sitting behind me on my bed. He always used to come into my room to watch TV as Mom wouldn't get him one of his own. I perked up when I saw a figure approaching from beyond the tree line. "Someone's coming," I announced to my brother. "Who?" he asked, not looking up. "Looks like someone from the woods." I leaned over the railing of the balcony, squinting to make out more of the stranger. 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. To male. Seems normal enough though, I added. "Probably some new hire," TAs replied absently. "Maybe." I leaned out just a little further, watching as the figure drew closer. Something told me he wasn't one of our employees. Just as the man started actually coming into view, he stopped in his tracks. My heart sank when he abruptly raised his head to meet my gaze. His stare was piercing, despite the distance between us. It sent a warm, pleasant chill up my spine. He stayed in place, gazing up at me. I tilted my head. He mirrored the movement. That's when my mother burst through the front door, grabbing the stranger by the arm and starting to drag him inside. Wasting no time, I rushed down the stairs on my tiptoes, coming to a halt right outside the living room door. I could hear Mom talking excitedly on the other side. "Oh, Jakush, it's been so long. Look at you." I have to confess, I only learned how to spell that nickname much later. She pronounced it Yasush. "I guess it's been a while." The young man cleared his throat. His voice was incredibly deep and husky, but somehow soft and pleasant at the same time. "It's nice to see you again, Mrs. Novak." "Likewise, sweetie. You've grown." "Is your husband around?" "Nope, no need to worry about that old grouch. Have a seat." I glanced down at myself. Nope. New clothes. Better clothes. I raced up the stairs again, ignoring my little brother's bewildered stare as I proceeded to tear my room apart for something nicer to wear. I found a cute little blouse with one hell of a cleavage and hastily pulled it on. Back downstairs, I took a deep breath, bracing myself as I nudged open the door. My mother was sitting at the dinner table. Across from her, the most stunning creature I'd ever seen. He wasn't conventionally attractive. His dark hair was frizzy, tousled, and unkempt, his skin pale and kind of veiny, but that man had eyes like an inkwell. He was lean as a whippet, but had surprisingly broad shoulders and visibly muscled arms. He looked over to me, regarding me with a blank stare I couldn't quite interpret. Then he tilted his head. I mirrored the movement. His mouth slowly began to curve into a smile. "Oh, hi, honey," my mother chirped. "Jacques, this is Fiona, my eldest. I've told you about her, remember?" When he rose to his feet, he stood at the exact same height as me. I briefly forgot how to walk and hopped over to shake his hand instead. He clasped it fast and with such eagerness that I nearly withdrew, but the touch itself was gentle and cautious. Somewhere in the distance, my mother explained, "Fiona, this is Jacek Hedman from the Black Gristmill. How come we haven't met before?" My question was directed at both my mother and the young man. Our families have actually been friends for generations. Jacek's father and I basically grew up together, and I've known Jacek since he was a little baby. They used to come over a lot, but when I married your dad, he kept on complaining about us getting together. I haven't seen Jacek for over a decade now. My mother let out a deep sigh, shaking her head at me. Your dad is just riddled with fear. He didn't want any of you kids to associate with the Hedmans. Shame, I said breathily. So anyways, it's about time you kids met. Jacques lives all alone out there with his old man. It's about time he made friends with someone his age, my mother went on. Jacek leaned in very quickly to whisper in my ear, "Seriously, don't call me Jacques. I'm not a little boy anymore." "I can see that," I assured him, smile widening as I took the opportunity to just very, very lightly stroke his thumb. He swallowed audibly. "Gee, good. Say, why isn't your father with you?" "I miss that guy," Mom chimed in. Jacek straightened up, his cheeks losing a bit of their color. "Oh, he's dead. That's why I came here. Figured you should know." Mom let out a sharp little cry. Tears began to spill from her eyes as she started sobbing uncontrollably. I was speechless. The way he'd delivered these news, flatly and without even blinking, had really thrown me off guard. "That's horrible. God, I'm so sorry." I pressed out, my overloaded mind struggling to adapt to the mood change. "I'm all right," he replied with a shrug. "He's been sick for a few years now. I was expecting it. But now you're all alone out there," Mom protested, losing herself in a fit of sobs. "I miss him, but he'll be fine." He sounded sincere. Walking over to my mother, I wrapped a comforting arm around her. Jacek regarded us, looking distinctly uneasy. "He'll leave you to it," he muttered. Just as he passed me, he leaned in once more, speaking again in that quick, hushed voice. "Meet me outside." I swallowed. Had I heard that right? As he went for the door, he pointed out at the garden, silently raising a brow. I nodded. I stayed inside to comfort my mother for 5 more minutes, before inconspicuously withdrawing myself and following Jacek. Stepping outside, I spotted him clinging to the trunk of one of our trees like a big squirrel. I hastily jogged up to him and he dropped to the ground. "Hi," he said, looking a little flustered. "Hi. Okay, so I meant to approach your mother about this, originally. She's always been like an aunt to me, but when I saw how emotional she got, I didn't want to burden her any further. So now I figured maybe you could lend me a hand." I shamefully pushed back an obscene yet intrusive thought about lending him a hand. "It's about my father. Don't fuss now, okay?" Jacek coughed softly. "The thing is, he didn't die of an illness." "What do you mean?" I asked with a frown. "Something killed him, and I might not be the type for mourning, but all the more for payback." His voice had somehow gotten even deeper. "How do you mean to exact that payback?" "A ritual. Simple enough. I have everything I need except virgin blood." I flushed. "Sorry to disappoint, but I can't help you with that." He gave me a puzzled look before awkwardly clearing his throat. "Common misconception, actually. Virgin blood simply means blood that hasn't been used for another incantation or rite before." I perked up. "Oh, well, that I've got." "And you'd let me use it?" "We'd have to meet up again at my place, though. Make sure to wear some sort of religious symbol. Oh, and I would have to cut you a little bit." "I won't mind," I promised, inching closer. He stifled a shivering sigh, nearly succeeding. "I'd be very gentle too," he added in a lower tone. We parted on that note and I ran for my room, shoving CAs off my bed and burying my face in my pillow to scream into. Now you'd think my demeanor rather childish for a 19-year-old, but you have to understand just how this man excited me. Of course I didn't know how to interpret the whole thing with his father. He didn't seem to be grieving, but perhaps he was simply in a bit of a volatile state. Maybe he was keeping his sadness to himself. I swore to myself that I wouldn't try anything. Jacek came to pick me up around nightfall. Having snuck downstairs, I waited for him outside. He appeared without making a sound. How he did so was beyond me, seeing as our lawn was blanketed in dead leaves. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. I nodded, holding up the cross on the necklace I was wearing to show him I hadn't forgotten. Off to the old gristmill we were. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show up," Jacek admitted. "Why's that?" "I don't know. I feel like I kinda gave off a weird vibe earlier. I'm not usually around girls, you know, except for the mermaids maybe, but they don't count." "I didn't even know there was a mill in the woods," I remarked. "Why doesn't my father want me around you?" "Your mom says he's wary of devil worshippers." I stopped in my tracks. "Of what now?" "The mill belongs to the devil. We just work there for him." Jolsek turned to look at me. "I'm sorry, should I have said something about that earlier? I just figured you wouldn't mind. Your mom doesn't, even though she wears that cross." "I don't mind per se, it's just surprising." "Haven't met many millers yet, have you?" I followed him nevertheless, and I was rather astonished when the mill came into view. It was the first time I'd been to that particular part of the forest. I've already described the building itself in a previous post of mine, but the black structure looked even more intimidating at night. Despite there not being any water pushing it, the big wheel was turning laboriously. I knew then not to question it. Jacek held the door for me. "Everything's ready. Sorry if it's dusty, we never clean." He led me up the stairs into what looked to be his and his father's living quarters. Everything was quite spartanic and untidy. A few lamps came flickering to light as I passed them to take a seat on the floor. It was only when the room was fully illuminated that I saw the chalk drawings beneath us. A big upside-down pentagram right in the center of the room, surrounded by a ton of symbols I didn't recognize. I watched as Jacek bent down to place a candle at each of the pentagram's tips and finally one in the middle. I caught the box of matches he tossed me in midair and went about lighting them. After rummaging around in the back of the room, Jacek joined me on the floor, holding up a dagger. I swallowed hard. "You're not gonna kill me with that thing though, right?" He instantly pressed a hand to his chest. "Cross my heart. You trust me." "Kinda feel like I shouldn't, but yeah." Jacek treated me to a fine smile as he scooted closer to me. "I'm just gonna take your hand there." Without further ado, he dragged the blade across my palm. It left a burning red line in its wake. I hissed, but altogether it wasn't so bad. "Quick, squeeze it out in the middle," Jacek instructed. "Over the candle." I crawled forward and obediently let the blood trickle onto the dancing flame. Pumping my fists, I pressed out as much as I could before pulling back and licking off the rest. I was about to turn to face Jacek again when suddenly all the lights in the room went off. The 5 candles at the pentagram's tips flared up once and then died. The only flame remaining was the one in the middle, burning fiercer than ever in a deep crimson light. I let out a soft gasp, startling when I felt Jacek's hand on my shoulder. "It's working," he whispered. "He's coming now." Pressing the dagger into my hands, he added, "Keep this on you for later." I was starting to wish he had at least given me a briefing before all of this. The floor beneath us started to shake hard enough to send the furniture bouncing. Jacek pulled me away from the pentagram, pointing at the door. "Once he's here, sneak over there and shut that door," he whispered. "Stab him when the time is right." The earthquake knocked over the candle and the fire started spreading, quickly filling the entire pentagram, but not reaching any further than that. I couldn't feel any heat emanating from it. The flames kept on rising and suddenly somebody stepped out from them as though climbing through a trap door. As soon as the person had emerged, the fire died down, leaving no trace. It was a guy in a weird-looking red tunic, complementing his wavy ginger hair and heated face. He was immensely wrinkled, not the kind of wrinkled you get when you age. He looked more like someone had taken a skeleton and dressed it in a wide and ill-fitting suit of skin. I physically recoiled at the sight. So this was a demon. It had to be. I had never seen one of those before, and the encounter far exceeded my expectations. Merely looking at this creature masquerading as a human instilled in me a primal, deep-reaching kind of fear, the sort that really turns your guts inside out. Thankfully, the being didn't seem to notice me at all. "Jacek Hetman," it gurgled out. "Why did you call on me in such a way?" "You know what you've done," the young miller replied evenly, jutting his jaw. "Your father went too far. He laid with my wife." I had some questions. "Dude, I don't care," Jacek said flatly. "He was the only kin I'd left. I called you here so you could make it up to me." The demon let out an incredulous laugh. "You gotta be kidding me." Jacek gave me a sidelong glance, and I began inching towards the door, my knees nearly buckling every step I took. "So you're not going to apologize?" he asked the creature. "You're killing me, boy." "Not yet, I ain't," Jacek answered. And it was at that moment that I slammed the door shut. The demon spun around. His twisted features began displaying something akin to anger. For a moment I was a bit confused, but then I realized that there was another chalk drawing on this side of the door. It had been open when we arrived there, so I hadn't seen it at first. An upturned pentagram. The demon let out a high-pitched growl but quickly caught himself. "What are you doing, Jacek?" he asked exasperatedly. "I just didn't want you to leave so early." "So now you're locked in here with me. What for?" Jacek shrugged, raising both hands as he began striding up to the hellspawn with a cheerful grin on his face. The demon tackled him before he could get any closer, pressing the squirming youth to the floor. "You forget yourself, boy." "Fiona, now," Jacek called, and I charged at the struggling pair, not hesitating to jam the dagger into the creature's back. That ended the fight in an instant. The demon let out an ear-piercing cry as his body crumbled into dust. I was trembling all over. Jacek's chest was heaving as he patted down his clothes, staying on his back for a little while to catch his breath. "It actually worked," he exclaimed, a joyful glint in his eyes. "Wait, you weren't sure it would?" I asked breathlessly, losing my grip on the dagger as it slid through my sweaty fingers. My head was reeling. It was a 50-50 kind of chance. He pushed himself up. "Fucking hell, but we did it, Fiona. You were so good." He looked at me with sincere admiration. "Are you kidding me? That was terrifying. And you weren't even sure we'd make it?" "Aw, relax. I'm sorry. You were never in any danger, though. That cross round your neck, he couldn't see you cause of that. He was from the hellsphere of wrath. And you know how they say fury blinds you." He trailed off. "It's kinda a whole thing. I could tell you a lot about hellspheres, though, if you want. Sometime. He'll think about it. You want me to walk you home?" "You'll find the way, thanks." "You mad or something?" "No." "Well, that was a straight-up lie, wasn't it? Look, I'm sorry. I should have told you beforehand. I'm just gonna go now." He sat up, looking sorely uneasy all of a sudden. "Are we good?" he asked, genuine concern creasing his brow. "Sure," I muttered flatly. Then I repeated in a clearer voice, "Sure," adding a smile. "Good. That's good. I wouldn't want to," he swallowed. "I wouldn't want to upset you." "Oh yeah, well, I am kind of angry. You really should make it up to me, you know." It was a relatively flat statement, but despite my lack of emphasis, he knew exactly what I was hinting at. His jaw dropped. For a moment he looked like a fish, inky eyes big and incredulous. He opened and closed his mouth a few times in silence. I grinned very, very widely. "Okay then, bye-bye." Regaining his ability to speak just a little too late, he called after me. "Hey, I took your blood virginity," laughing as I shut the door behind me. That was my first encounter with Jacek. Only the first. You didn't think that was all, right? He was definitely crazy, but it didn't take long for my caution of him and his black magic to be overruled by my attraction to him. I didn't want to be too obvious about it, nor too forward. I told Casimir about the whole thing, and he was only too happy to assist. Thus, when winter came and froze the Twin Lakes, we went practice our figure skating right there by the Black Mill. I always pretended like I didn't see Jacek watching from his window, just for the fun of it. Musas, to remind you all, this happened when I was 19. It's sort of a continuation of what I told you about last time, and like it says in the title, this is gonna explain why I'm always in a wedding dress. I know some of you have been aching to hear about that. I had just met the son of my mother's deceased childhood friend, namely Jacek, the new lord of the Black Mill. My feelings towards him were complicated. For one, he scared me shitless, but he was also the hottest guy I'd ever met. I was rather certain he liked me too. My little brother and I always went ice skating on the lake by the mill, the sole reason being that Jacek would see me. He would watch us every time, keeping his distance for courtesy's sake. I'd meet his gaze, show him I knew, but nothing more. One time he actually waved to me in that come hither kind of way, and all I did was shake my head. He went back inside, slamming the door so hard that the sound reverberated across the Twin Lakes. That day I waited until dark to return to the mill. I knocked on Jacek's door, and though it took him a while to answer, the look on his face was well worth the wait. "Hi," he said. "Hi." Silence. Then Fiona, "What are you doing here?" Saying hi. That's it? "Fiona, it's 2 a.m. You're in the middle of the woods. Aren't you cold? Freezing. I smiled, hearing him swallow when the gears started turning. Making haste to step aside, he held the door open for me. It's really much warmer in here. I walked past him, hugging myself. Still kinda chilly. I have a bed too, J6 suggested readily. Said bed wasn't much more comfortable than the floor, a comparison founded on factual evidence. 2 days later, we tried mine instead, and thus, J6 climbing up the wall of the house and onto my balcony at night became a regular occurrence. Though he was a few years my senior, he hadn't been with another woman before, not too surprising, all things considered. So let's just say I had some explaining to do, but feeling wanted by him was the most intense sensation I had experienced since my soul had run off on me. He knew I'd been crazy about him from the start as well. Sharing this deep admiration for one another was amazing. We got along great on a personal level too. He introduced me to the hellhound he'd summoned for company and taught me some basic spells that were necessarily black magic, just useful, not unholy witchery. I'd rid to him, not that he couldn't. He merely hated the eye strain and take him out into town occasionally to show him the basics of modern human life. He was a bit of a pyromaniac, but I thought it was cool that he could light a fire using nothing but sticks and rocks. So crafty. In hindsight, he was really kind of perfect. I can't think of any man I'd ever respected or felt more attracted to. But something was missing, and of course things went wrong. I should have really seen it coming when he asked me to marry him. J6, we've known each other for 5 months. My parents knew each other for 3. What are you saying? Too soon for you? Yeah, way too soon. 3 months might have worked for them, but not me. Sorry. Okay, I hear you. I'll wait. He asked again 6 months later and was absolutely bewildered when I still told him no. Honestly, how long do you want to wait? I'm not sure. I'm just not there yet, you know? It's been close to a year. Exactly, not even a full 12 months. J6 threw his arms up. Fine, I'll wait another year for pity's sake. Now, I thought there wouldn't be another year. He was just asking for too much too fast, and besides, I hadn't even thought of the implications of such a marriage, and I refused to. I didn't love J6. I wasn't sure I could really love anybody. Too much of me was missing for such a strong emotion. I never told him that, but he never asked either, and I understood soon enough that he simply took it for granted. He figured that since we were sleeping together, that had to mean I loved him and would marry him someday. He wasn't at fault for thinking that way. Our concepts of love were simply worlds apart. The problem was that I could never bring myself to inform him of that. Being with him made me feel good, and I pushed back the thoughts of our inevitable breakup, procrastinating for my own sake while he kept growing more and more attached. I tried to delude myself into believing that he didn't actually want to marry me. How would that even work? My family had no idea we were an item. He lived in a haunted mill in what was still my parents' land, and who the hell would even wed us? The devil? He just had to know all this, right? He had to know we could never be for real. Well, he didn't. I found out about that when he asked me again 2 years later. I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I was stringing him along, and that I had been doing so for far too long. It was winter time again, and we'd been on a scenic little walk around the Twin Lakes, careful to avoid the guards on their rounds. About that, I began hesitantly. I don't think we can really go into that direction. J6 stopped in his tracks. Elaborate. You don't actually see this going anywhere, do you? I mean, we can get married. It's just not an option. His brows furrowed. It would be if you wanted to. Then I guess I don't, I said meekly, my throat bone dry. Why? His voice was the same monotonous flat bass had used when talking about the loss of his father. Did you never stop to think about it all? Wouldn't have asked you thrice if I didn't. Yes, but I mean the big picture, I stammered, fumbling for words. It'd be kinda complicated, no? Most good things are. Mom and Dad had their own problems, but they were happy. We're not your mom and dad though, I argued. I don't want to stay in these woods forever. I know my mother wants me to, but like, I'm gonna leave this shit behind someday. Not anytime soon, but someday. Yeah, so? I'd come with you. You've literally sworn yourself to the devil. Exactly. I've got amazing outside connections. J6? No. There's just no way. I don't get you, he said blankly. What did I do wrong? Nothing. This is just out of your control. Don't you love me? He asked. I fell silent. I felt beyond cruel. My face was burning with shame and something in my chest seemed to break. There was an actual physical sensation, a sting so painful I kind of wanted to check if there wasn't a knife sticking out of my body somewhere. "Don't you love me?" Jacek repeated, taking a step towards me. I very slightly shook my head. Then I was treated to a thoroughly unwholesome sight. I could actually make out the second his heart broke. It was this single, awful moment when his eyes flew open and all his features seemed to derail. Fucking hell, Fiona. It's been 3 years. Hot tears started rolling down my cheeks. "I'm sorry. You never thought to mention any of that. I thought you just needed more time." He started sputtering, pale face turning red as his shoulders began to tremble. "Why the fuck would you do that to me?" He howled, and I instinctively took a step back. "Please, calm down." "No, I want calm the hell down. What were you thinking? Did you like it?" I listened in horror as his voice got deeper and deeper, slowly contorting into a warped, chill-inducing growl as his face twisted into a grimace of wrath and pain. This wasn't the same man I'd walked alongside mere minutes ago. This was something else, and I didn't want to find out what. "Did you like playing me for a fool?" "Jacek, what's happening to you?" I pressed out. "You should know. You're doing it." I kept on stumbling backwards, trying to distance myself from him, but he kept on inching towards me, taking weirdly slow, wonky steps. His whole body was twitching like a distorted image on a glitching screen. My heart sank at the sound of bones cracking. His knees were slowly turning inside out, accompanied by the most awful noise I'd ever heard, a grinding crunch. Jacek's legs gave way beneath him and he dropped to the ground, curling up as he began to cough violently. The blood he threw up painted the pristine snow in the darkest shade of red I'd ever seen. I was panicking, screaming at the top of my lungs. Caution thrown to the wind, I'd flung myself to the ground beside him, grabbing him, holding him, cradling him as he kept on spitting and wheezing. I tried to keep his head still as he kept bashing it into the ground in his frenzy, his eyes unnaturally wide and filled with mindless terror. Then, all of a sudden, it was over. Jacek let out one last long cry as his body seemed to violently stretch itself, stiffening like a board as his bones snapped back into place. For a moment, he merely laid there on his back in the tossed-over, bloodied snow, his limbs slowly relaxing and his voice returning to normal as he slowly but surely managed to catch his breath. He opened his eyes to meet my gaze. The warmth had vanished from them completely, and the iciness left over sent chills down my spine. I recoiled, raising my hands to grouch my burning throat. My heart was still drumming wildly, my pulse racing in my ears. I was beyond dazed, the horror of the situation not relinquishing its grip on me. "What was that?" I finally breathed. Jacek pushed himself up onto his elbows, gazing up into the gray sky. "I'm sorry," he muttered absently. "My body works a little differently. I'm okay now." "I don't understand," I whispered. He slowly turned to face me, opening his jacket and peeling aside his shirt. I froze in my spot. Cold dread crept into my core upon laying eyes in his chest. There was a hole. A big, black, oozing hole right where his heart was supposed to be. Blood was still dripping from the edges, framed by flayed skin and protruding bits of torn flesh. "No," it was all I could say. "Jacek, I'm so sorry." He let out a soft little chuckle as he got to his feet. "Oh, you will be." He grabbed a fistful of the tainted red snow, and before I could react, he smeared it right across my face. "Stay seated." "It's okay," he muttered. "This won't hurt a bit." An amused smile spread on his face as he knelt down in front of me and started piling fresh snow on my lap. I was still too shocked to move. I just stared at him in confusion before finally breaking out of my stupor and batting his hand away. He smirked. "Too late." "What?" "You made me real angry, you know, and I have to move on like this. He tapped his chest. "This isn't gonna heal anytime soon. It wouldn't be fair if you just got to go back to normal." "Oh, don't worry, you'll look so wonderful." "The fuck are you talking about?" I brushed off the snow, staggering to my feet, only to realize that the gray coat I'd been wearing had turned into a long white skirt. Feeling the sting of the cold on my bare shoulders, I noticed that the only thing shielding my upper body from the elements was a thin layer of lace. My very first wedding dress. Jacek was doubling over with laughter. It echoed through the forest and then turned into loud shivering sobs and wails again as he started walking off, leaving me to stare and shudder. I never saw him again after that. It didn't take me long to figure out what exactly he had done to me. I couldn't wear normal clothes anymore. They would singe my skin like fire, and biting through the pain wasn't an option, for they would fall off by themselves if I kept them on for longer than a couple minutes. Since my only alternative was walking around in my underwear, I resigned myself and started buying up all kinds of bridal gowns. So that's why I hate talking about JSEC. Casimir loves that story, he thinks it's hilarious, but I don't like it nearly as much. Since I only told you about things that happened in the past in my last 2 posts, here's an update on what's currently going on. Yesterday, Casimir found a YouTube channel with a bunch of videos that are very obviously footage from my woods. There's a clip of a gaggle of Rusalki, that gross-ass 2-headed bear that sometimes eats my trash and even the leshy stalking by. My brother is working on somehow taking them down. Meanwhile, I've been trying to find out where JSEC lives these days. I guess I could try and find another occultist, but I need someone reliable, and as much as I hate the thought of having to see him again, I know he's the only one I can trust. That's why I've been scouring social media once again, trying to find a trace of him. I went into this expecting not to come up with anything, but it seems that digitalization has reached even my ex. I found him on an obscure forum discussing black magic, because of course that's where he'd be. I wasn't sure it was him at first, but the username Captain Hyacinth kind of piqued my interest. He wrote the way he'd used to speak, his boyish humor always swinging along, while still seeming more savvy than anyone else. He also claimed to be in the direct employ of the devil, so that checked out as well. The more I clicked through his post history, the more certain I became. Eventually, I decided to just create an account under the name of your forest wife and shoot him a DM. With shaking fingers, I started typing, "JSEC Hetman?" The reply came surprisingly fast. "Wotef, who is this?" "Fiona Novak. Any chance you remember me? Sorry for reaching out like this. I know it's been a long time and I get it if you don't want to talk to me, but hear me out, please." Maybe that had been too direct. I waited for him to text back for about 5 minutes, but nothing came. My heart was beating kind of quickly. I needed to get away from that screen. "Says, how's it going?" I called out, hurrying over to my brother, who was scrolling on his laptop. "Pretty good," he muttered, not looking up. "No one believes these videos are real anyways. I don't think we need to worry about them." I found JSEC. Casimir whipped his head up. "No shit. For real?" I nodded, texted him. "He's not answering though." "Oh, he will. Give him some time." "We don't have any time. And how are you so sure?" He shrugged. "I just know. You were his first girl. You don't forget someone like that." I frowned. "Do you remember your first girlfriend?" My brother laughed. "Oh, hell no." Feeling a distinct need for fresh air, I headed outside. Maybe I was just going to have myself an outdoor day. A thick blanket of glittering snow was covering the red meadow as I stride across it, each step accompanied by a satisfying crunch. I hadn't taken a walk like that for a while, just movement for me to relax, not to seek out some abandoned building or dump a body. I knew I couldn't run from my problems, but I wasn't running, I was only taking a break. I stopped to chat with Gus for a minute before proceeding into the frost-laden thicket. The wildlife in my forest, the actual wildlife, keeps mostly to itself. I already mentioned that there aren't any birds anymore, so any chirping you might hear in these parts means trouble. All the actual animals mostly stay in hiding due to the amount of superior predators around. There's the occasional rabbit or deer you might come across, as well as some squirrels and other smaller critters. Suddenly, the relative quiet and serenity was disturbed by a loud, drawn-out scream that immediately stopped me in my tracks. It sounded like an animal, an actual animal. In fact, I was pretty sure it was a deer. Now, a deer getting caught and gutted by one of the lake people or the forest spirits was no rare occurrence. Something was wrong about that cry, though. It wasn't like a dying bleat, it somehow sounded furious. I wasn't armed, but I started heading towards it anyways, figuring I'd just be sneaky. Ducking from bush to bush, I made my way over to where the noises had come from. I found it on a small clearing, a young buck hopping around like he had gone mad. It was a deeply unsettling sight, seeing it bash its head into the same tree trunk over and over again. I swore I could already hear his skull crack. Still, it started standing, throwing back its head as if it was trying to break its own neck. I felt like I was about to vomit. I could sense that I was witnessing something innately wrong, something beyond unholy. I thought feverishly, I had to step in somehow. I didn't want this tormented creature to die in such a way. But try as I might, I could not come up with anything. I would have to make a run for it and tell Casimir. He'd know what to do, and if not, he was still a good enough shot to give the buck a mercy killing from a safe distance. Maybe afterwards, we could examine it. The buck had something quite different in mind though. Before I had even moved an inch, it had already spotted me behind the tree trunk where it had been hiding. I could swear I hadn't made a single sound, but no matter how, the damn thing had its sights set on me now. I let out a startled shriek as it charged me, only managing to dodge by a hair's width. Now that it was closer, I noticed that there was something wrong with the buck's eyes. Those weren't the full, peaceful brown eyes of a deer. They were jittery, darting from side, and worse yet, they looked distinctly human. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. I kept on ducking and jumping as the freak deer took leap after leap towards me, unable to stifle the cries spilling from my lips. I tried to go back the direction I'd come from, but it was hard making progress with how this beast was chasing me. There was no doubt in my mind that it was attempting to kill me, and it was getting closer to reaching its goal every time it came at me. I realized in horror that I was starting to tire out. I wouldn't last at this rate. The deer got close again, close enough for me to feel its hot breath on my face. Just as my mind was starting to wrap around the prospect of meeting my death on a forest walk of all things, something came crashing down on the frenzied deer, blood spattered, hitting my skirt. At first I thought it was a falling tree, only to realize that it was a much more animate being, the leshy, having thrown himself into the buck with the full weight of his own enormous body, slowly drew himself back up, revealing the crushed carcass beneath him. "That would be the second time I've ruined a gown of yours," he growled out, clearly relishing the stunned panic in my wide eyes. Still frozen in shock and bewilderment, I watched as a strange gray cloud rose from the cadaver, quickly dissipating. "What the hell was that?" I sighed, shoulders dropping as I allowed myself to relax and catch my breath. "Buys," the leshy grunted. I squinted. "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that." "None of your concern. Stick to your task, wench." "Hold up. You know something." I instantly regretted my demanding tone when the enormous creature turned back to face me, bringing his snout dangerously close to my face. The lessy's heated breath rose up into the air in cloudy puffs, and I held his glowing gaze for a moment that terrified me just as much as the encounter with the mad buck had. He didn't say a word. My unease mounting in the silence, I ended up averting my eyes, swallowing audibly as I took a step back. "I'm sorry, sir. Run along before I forget myself. Now, I am a fully grown woman, but the Lord of the Woods could make me piss my pants any time. I was therefore all too eager to obey, only daring to slow my step when I was sure the distance between us was sufficient. There was obviously something the leshy wasn't telling me. That in itself wasn't much of a surprise, but I could tell that this was different. Whatever had happened to the deer, it had seemed to worry the wood demon, if indeed he was capable of feeling such an emotion. He sure had been reluctant to speak up about it, and seeing as he normally can't get enough of his own voice, that made things rather strange. I came across Fergus again on my way back and cadged some coffee from his thermos. He could tell something was up, but had the grace not to ask. "Say, how long has it been since you've been working for us? I swear you were already here when my mother was still alive," I remarked, sipping from his cup. "Oh yeah," he said, smacking his lips. "It's been a while." "I'm glad you're still around," I told him earnestly. "Long as you don't think I'm getting too old for the job." Gus laughed and I snorted. "Bullshit. How old even are you, like barely 40, right?" "I'm 57, you liar," he said affectionately. "Not to put any pressure on you, but just so you know, you're going to be missed around here when you leave us." "I should hope so, but don't worry, I'm not quite done yet. This was my first job and it's gonna be my last." "Don't say that, the forest might misunderstand you." "Oops." He covered his mouth with his palm. "Wouldn't want that." When I got back home, I tried to set my mind on the task at hand again. Whatever had happened out there probably had nothing to do with all of this. It had only been the usual forest strangeness. I had almost died again, nothing out of the ordinary. I'm living on borrowed time over here anyways. Still, when I laid eyes on my computer, my stomach immediately dropped again. I needed to know if JSEC had responded, but I didn't want to check. Why was this freaking me out so much? I willed myself to sit down in front of the black screen. Come on, come on, come on. I turned it on and several messages sprung up. My breath caught in my throat. I was almost too nervous to take in the words. JSEC had in fact answered me. 4 times, in total. The first message had been deleted. The 3 that followed lifted a weight off my shoulders though. Ignore the one above. I was just really surprised, so I said something stupid. "So, to what do I owe the honor? You need something, don't you?" "Okay, scratch that. How are you doing?" I'm sorry, I'm really trying not to sound catty. I let go of a deep breath, bracing myself. Did you cuss me out at first? You totally did, didn't you? The response popped up immediately. Not really. I was just being dumb. Good news for you though, I'm doing crappy. I'm just gonna go out on a limb here and assume you're still practicing magic. He didn't send an actual answer, just this one emoji with the sunglasses on. I definitely need your help. I'll pay you too. Help as in advice, or I gotta be there. You'd probably have to be here. Radio silence. I bit my lip. I totally get it if you can't, I added. Or if you don't want to. Okay. The text arrived at the same time I sent off mine. Incoming. I'll hurry, think I can be there in a day. Call me if something goes very wrong in the meantime. Beneath the text was a phone number. So I guess now, I'll hold still until Jetzik gets here. I'm nervous and I don't know why. I know he's going to help me. He'll expect compensation, but that's okay, it'll be well worth the money. In the meantime, I'm going to try and look up what a bise is. I'm starting to have a feeling that I shouldn't take this lightly. Today started off really shitty and only got progressively worse. I had spent the night drifting in and out of a nightmare-plagued, uneasy kind of sleep, so I woke up with puffy, bloodshot eyes and all the beautiful complexion of a corpse. I tried saving what I could with a wash and some cream, but I still looked like I'd been floating bottom up in a lake for the last 6 hours. Of course, this also had to be the day Jasek Hetman arrived. Yes, I'm glad he's here. Yes, I know my appearance should be the least of my concern, but isn't it kind of natural not to want to present as a train wreck when meeting with your ex? I simply don't want to be the kind of person that makes you wonder why you ever liked them in the first place. Casimir and I were having breakfast when the doorbell rang. I froze up. That's probably him, my brother remarked with his mouth full of fried egg, pointing at the front door with his coffee mug. Probably, I said meekly, taking another sip of tea. Well, aren't you gonna let him in? Could you do it for me? CA's grimaced. What? Fiona. Answer the door. I bit my lip. I kinda don't want to. You're not seriously gonna hide behind me, are you? He came all this way. He's just your ex, not the Leshy. He might as well have been. I know CA's just, please. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, but when we come in here you will have pulled yourself together and face him like a normal person. I swear, I said solemnly. Casimir sighed, pushing himself to his feet and marching out into the hallway. My heart was pounding like there was no tomorrow. At the same time, I was painfully aware of the disconnect between my body and mind. Sometimes, your soul being missing doesn't make your negative emotions duller, just worse and even more uncomfortable. I tensed upon hearing the muffled voices of the two men as my brother welcomed Jasek Hetman inside. Hey man, how you doing? Did you get here okay? And there it was again, that goddamn stupidly thrilling voice. It had lost absolutely none of its charm. It was as deep and rough and husky as ever. Yeah, thanks. I travel all the time, it's nothing. I rose to my feet, keeping my hand on the kitchen counter for support. CA strode right back in, sitting down across from me once more to nurse his coffee, but the man following him stopped dead in the doorway. For a moment I just stared at him, and he stared back with those same inkwell eyes. They were about the only thing on him I recognized. Jasek had grown his hair out. It hung just past his shoulders in thick black locks, perfectly matching the neatly groomed full beard he sported. This had to be illegal or something. Why? Oh, why was this what I was thinking about right now? He held my gaze, slightly tilting his head. I mirrored the movement. Is either of you two gonna say anything, or should I start? Casimir asked from behind me, which was when I realized that we'd been standing in total silence for like a full 20 seconds. I opened my mouth to speak, producing nothing but a dry croak. I cleared my throat to begin again. Hi. Thank you so much for coming. I wasn't sure you'd go through with it. Why is that? I just felt like I gave off a weird vibe online, you know? I admitted. Nothing wrong with that. It was a weird situation. He shrugged off his fluffy coat, hanging it up on the wall only for it to fall right back down. He chuckled awkwardly, bending down to pick it up. Don't stare at his butt. Don't stare at his butt. All right then. What's this about? Has to be a huge scrape you're in. If you've decided to look me up. For the first time in over a decade, the last part came out through gritted teeth, before his voice trailed off. Should I have looked you up before? I asked haltingly. What? No, of course not. So we don't like each other? Not one bit. he said breathily, regarding me with oddly soft eyes. I wouldn't have called you if it wasn't important, and you're the most capable magician I know. Also kind of the only one, but I left out that part. If you want money, we can totally come to an— Shush, Jacek muttered, waving me off with a flick of his wrist. In not taking your money, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry for what happened back there, just so that's out of the way. No, I handled it horribly. I kept leading you on, and I reacted like a total psychopath. I shouldn't have done that. I was miserable, and I wanted to make you miserable. I shouldn't have. You were right for blowing up at me, for being angry. I deserved that. And I'm sorry, I don't even fucking mind the wedding dress. He gave me a once-over, straining a smile. It looks great on you, he offered. Thanks. Has your chest healed over? No, but thanks for asking. Silence. Casimir let out a low groan. All right, guys, I'm just gonna step in before this gets awkward or anything. Let's have a seat, and well talk this out, and let bygones be bygones, okay? So we did, and it cleared the air a little bit. Jacek was clearly just as uncomfortable in my presence as I was in his, but he seemed surprisingly eager to assist us. Do you still have the note? He asked. And when I handed it to him, he examined it very closely, turning it over, smelling and ripping at it. Here's what we can do, he said, finally rising from his seat. We're gonna need your fireplace. Sakez was on his feet in a heartbeat. Great, I'll get it started. So, who is that guy? Jacek asked under his breath after a short period of silence. Oh, I never said. Casimir's my little brother. Huh, the kid who walked in on us that one time. The very same, Siaz commented over his shoulder, shuddering at the memory. Fire's going. What now, Captain? Fiona, the note's made out to you, so the action's on your part. The cool thing about fireplaces is that they do things your normal heaters just can't. Jacek rose to his feet, walked over to the crackling fire, and motioned for us to follow, the flickering lights reflecting in his pitch-black eyes. He gave us a lazy grin before smacking his lips and hurling a ball of spit into the flames. They immediately burned up, roaring so loudly I shrunk back. It's okay, Jacek said, soothingly laughing. It's ready now, you've got to talk to it. First tell it who you love the most in the world. I smiled hesitantly. Casimir Novak, I called into the fireplace. My brother let out a soft cooing noise beside me. Now who you hate the most, Jacek instructed. Wannabe internet cryptid hunters, I shouted. Jacek snorted. That's not gonna work. It wants names. Well, there isn't really anyone in particular, I argued. Just think of someone. There's gotta be someone. Joelle McKenna. From high school, CA's inquired. She was super mean. Don't worry, last time I heard she was doing crappy. Her husband divorced her because she was having an affair, and then the fling guy left her too. How do you know all that? I asked. I was the fling guy. Okay people, focus, Jacek commanded. Now, the person you miss the most. Anea Novak, I said softly. Right, Anea, Jacek mumbled. Can we talk about that later? I never found out how she passed. I nodded, and he handed me the note. Toss it in, he instructed. I did, and the flames roared again. This time, however, I found my own voice being thrown back at me. Tom Hayes, the fire uttered, sounding exactly like me. Then the flames collapsed into ashes, leaving the fireplace in total silence. Cold anger crept its way into my core, and I balled up my fist. Tom Hayes, Jacek repeated. There you have it. That's the one who wrote the note. That's one of my employees, I confirmed, nodding along. I guess it's good to know, but my hands are still tied. I want my soul back. About that, why'd you never tell me you were soulless back when we were together? Could you have done something about it? Yes, and I gladly would have. So why not? I didn't respond, only buried my face in my hands. You didn't trust me, did you? You were afraid of me. Jacek's voice was flat and subdued. Can we move on from this? Please? Jacek swallowed audibly. Okay, he said very quietly. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I know I fucked up. I swear. It's okay, he repeated, and I spotted a muscle tensing in his jaw. So about Mom, I began, wishing desperately to change the topic. How'd you hear she passed? Friends downstairs. You know, he held both his index fingers to either side of his head to indicate horns. We got comfortable on the sofa again, and CA's joined us with something to drink. Resting my hands in my voluminous skirt, I cleared my throat. "Jasek, I never meant to keep you away from her. She'd ask about you all the time, and I just feel so shitty. I'm really sorry." When he replied, it was with a set jaw and deeply sorrowful eyes. "That was on me. I could have visited any time. Sure, I didn't, because I was scared of seeing you, but it was still my decision, you know?" He took a sip of his coffee. "So what happened to your mother?" I let out a deep sigh, bracing myself. Here's what I told him. Of course, writing this down allows for a lot more personal reflection, but Jasek got the gist of it as well. My mother was never a meek woman. She had long since lost her sense of wonder at what the forest had to offer. Most of the time, unless one of the creatures we encountered presented an immediate danger to us, it would rather annoy than frighten her. I don't think there was much that ever could truly scare her, and yet she spent the days leading up to her death riddled with fear, slowly going insane within her own four walls. Nothing could have prepared us for how she would meet her end. When the signs began to show, it was already too late. It started with the two of us standing on the porch one sunny winter day, looking out at the tree line and the red meadow in the distance. Mom cocked her head, frowning at something I couldn't see. Eventually I asked her what she was staring at. "There's a face in that tree trunk over there," she said softly, pointing at a large, wide pine. I squinted. "I don't see anything," I remarked. "Oh," my mother's voice was absent, as she let out a soft little chuckle. "Sounds like I'm in trouble then." "In trouble? Why?" "The Holderfolk, honey. The hidden people. Should I know them?" "No one should," she muttered. "I didn't think I'd ever have to bring them up to you." "Are you okay, Mom?" "I don't think so." I said nothing more, only hugged her. I could already tell that something bad was about to happen, but I had no idea what we were actually in for yet. The real horror began that same night. Mom had been weirdly quiet the entire time, uncharacteristically so. We were sitting side by side watching TV together when she started, mumbling. I couldn't make out what she was saying. It all sounded like freakish, incoherent gibberish. It reminded me of how the Bannock spoke, but with this I wasn't able to make out any actual words in between. The familiar feeling of dread started creeping up in my chest, but this time it was much more intense considering how relatively mild the situation itself was. This wasn't some kind of ghost thumping around in the house, or the Leshy glaring at me with his glowing eyes. This was my mother, acting incredibly strange. "Mom?" I cautiously placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Her whispering got louder, more frantic, but remained completely intelligible. I broke into a cold sweat. "Mom?" I asked again, even more tentatively. She raised her voice into an ear-piercing screech, her mouth opening wider than I'd thought possible. It lasted for around 3 seconds before ceasing abruptly. Mom sank back into her seat, an empty, absent look on her face. Her chest was slowly rising and falling, shallow breaths slipping through her lips. She then turned to face me. "Fiona, forgive me. You need to forgive. And you need to..." She trailed off, suddenly wheezing for air before leaning in a little closer. "You need to take the fire. The fire in the flesh, Fiona." She slumped over before throwing her head back in one sharp, swift, violent motion. A grumbling, rough laugh erupted from her throat. "God, I miss my sons." I was close to tears at this point, shaking like a leaf. I was clueless as to what was going on, but I knew it was not good. I knew it was detrimental. "Marion and Jem," I whispered, trying desperately to wrap my head around what she was trying to tell me. "Everything's going so green," she pressed out, every syllable that left her mouth a hard cough. "For you too, my child. Not now, not soon, but someday. Please, Mom. I don't understand." She fell silent, then got to her feet and started walking towards the staircase, her gait robotic and unnatural. I immediately went to follow her, feeling a tad woozy upon rising. Dad was standing at the foot of the stairs, and she pushed him aside with astounding force, sending him screaming and tumbling onto his back. "Ania, what the fuck?" he shouted, then turned to me. "What's going on?" I shook my head. I think he could see the panic in my eyes as I hurried after Mom, only to realize that she was heading for the bedroom. Why my parents still shared a sleeping space despite their obvious distaste for one another was beyond me. She slammed the door shut behind her, leaving me to stand in the hallway, gaping like the terrified idiot that I was. The only thought that was of any comfort to me was that perhaps she'd be back to normal in the morning. Quite the opposite turned out to be the case. After a night of uneasy sleep, I went downstairs, expecting to be the first one awake. The second I reached the foot of the stairs, I was hit by a wall of stench. I could hear flies buzzing somewhere in the kitchen. It was loud, really loud. There had to be a whole swarm of them. Why were they here? How had they gotten in? Pinching my nose, I proceeded into the living room. Step by cautious step, my wobbly legs carried me closer and closer towards the kitchen. I stopped in my tracks upon laying eyes on the long table, or rather, what was on top of it. There, lying smack in the middle, was a doe's carcass. Bones were jutting out of its flesh in places, and its limbs were twisted, sticking out at weird angles. The flies had already gathered on nearly every inch of the body. Plates had been set up all around the cadaver, along with cups and cutlery. At the top of the table, reclining in her chair, was my mother. In her hand, she was cradling a glass of what I dearly hoped to be wine. She turned her head to face me, her features a stiff, unreadable mask. "Some breakfast, honey?" Taking in the sick display my mother had greeted me with, I was unable to contain my terror. The way the slaughtered doe's glazed eyes looked up at me, my mother's completely vapid stare as penetrating as it was numb while she kept nursing that fucking wine glass. It was too much. I doubled over and emptied my stomach onto the floor. What had become of my mother? I had this feeling of disconnect again, like my body wasn't mine to control. My soul's absence was making itself painfully noticeable in my state of distress. Nevertheless, I found my fingers trembling as beads of cold sweat ran down my skin. My guts were still churning, and I was whimpering like a dying cat. "Mom?" I pressed out, tears rolling down my cheeks. "Please, I want my mom back." I don't know why that was the only thing I could think to say, but my mind was in another place entirely. The carnage didn't matter anymore. The buzzing noises didn't matter anymore. All that mattered was my mother. Just to remind you, I was in my mid-20s when this happened, but my fear for my mother was reducing me to a much more vulnerable state. I felt like a kid again, and I was just about ready to pee my pants, but I had to pull myself together. I took a cautious step towards the familiar woman who was sitting there, unmoved, in a bloodbath of her own creation. I extended my hand to her. "Mom, let's go upstairs. Let's go lie down." But I just slept the whole night long. "I think it hasn't been quite enough," I pressed out, trying to hide the tremor in my voice. "If you say so." Mom rose from her seat. "But remember, you're a part of him, and he's a part of you." "Who?" Ignoring my question, she latched onto my arm. "He has a deep, deep lust for you, Fiona. But don't be afraid. It's the same lust he feels for everyone and everything, because we're all part of him, you know?" "I don't understand," I muttered, voice brittle. I had a feeling she was trying to tell me something of actual relevance, but whatever madness had taken hold of her didn't let her. "It'll be over soon. He never needed me, but he's getting old. Old, and so vulnerable. Hell need you, and you need him." She paused to take a long, wheezing breath. "His love is lust, and his lust turns into hunger, and he keeps confusing the three." "What are you talking about?" "Oh, it'll be over soon, honey. Don't worry so much. I'm sorry for the mess." She let out another sigh as I guided her into her bedroom and allowed her to gently lower herself down on the mattress beside Dad. He had already sat up and was regarding us in bewilderment, but I motioned for him to stay quiet. "I do so miss my little boys. And the one with the fire in his throat, I miss that one too." I swallowed audibly as I reached for the blanket to tuck her in. She looked so tiny all of a sudden. "I love you, Fiona." Mom closed her eyes, grasping my hand in hers. "This is the hard part," she whispered. Her head hit the pillow and she drifted off to sleep in an instant. My father and I exchanged stupefied glances. "You don't want to see what happened downstairs," I informed him. "I've got to go clean up. Keep the others up here until I've given you the green light. We need to talk about getting her admitted later. We'll have to call a doctor or something. I don't know." I started trudging down the stairs. Our house had gotten very empty over the last couple years. Jem had already left us a long time ago. CA's had launched his career and moved out a couple years prior, so my sisters were the only kids who still stayed at our place, aside from myself. For as long as I can remember, it had been set in stone that I would be the one to inherit the land. I think my mother had known that from the moment she popped me out, and Shed started making her expectations very clear to me in my early 20s. Honestly, part of me had already known there was no escape for me, no life outside the forest. I spent many years in denial about that. By the time this happened though, I knew my place. I knew it would always be me who'd have to deal with the bloody shit. I got nauseous several times while tidying up the kitchen. The dough wasn't particularly easy to carry, and the flies and the stench didn't help. At some point, I just sort of mentally disconnected from everything. My mind was somewhere far, far away while my hands picked up and scrubbed the plates and wiped the blood off the table. My legs carried me out the door as I dragged the dough outside, leaving a bald valley in the fresh snow as I crossed the yard with the cadaver in tow. My back was starting to hurt. I let go of the dough and straightened up to stretch, only to bump into someone who'd been standing right behind me. I whipped my head around to find myself face to face with the Leshy, who had mercifully adopted his human form, lest I would have likely suffered cardiac arrest. "Bring me food." "There, ERS." He pointed at the dough. "Well, you can have it, I guess," I muttered, still sort of shaken. "You just give me shit otherwise, right?" Oops, probably shouldn't talk like that to the Lord of the Woods. It had kinda just slipped out. I was still in a daze, my tongue acting on its own. I was already preparing for hell to break loose, but the Leshy actually started smiling. "Oh, I'll give you more than enough shit in your lifetime, Fiona." Fiona. Hearing my name from him was always beyond eerie. I gritted my teeth but refrained from commenting. "But not now," the Leshy clarified graciously. "Although I do like company while I eat." He cocked his head. "Please no," I mumbled wearily. His smile grew wider as he pointed at the ground. "Sit." I sighed very deeply before gathering my skirt at my sides and plopping down. I tried not to watch as the Leshy knelt down, setting his cudgel aside and reaching out his hand, proceeding to plunge it into the carcass, somehow instantly piercing the skin. His fingers coaxed a disgusting squelching noise from the dozen sides as he started rummaging around in them. Just as I thought the sound was going to make me throw up again, he pulled his arm back out, producing something red and drippy. It took me a while to realize it was the doe's heart. He held it out to me. "Take a bite," he invited. "No, thanks." "Take a bite," the Leshy repeated. "Thanks, but seriously, no." "Fiona." This time it sounded like a threat. So I started crying. The Leshy just kind of looked at me with wide eyes before sinking his teeth into the heart himself, chewing pensively. "What's wrong?" he asked, not bothering to swallow before speaking up. I kept bawling, gurgling incoherently. The wood demon was beginning to look a little put off, but he didn't stop eating. We must have been quite a sight sitting there together. I think I was starting to make him uncomfortable if he was able to feel something of the sort. There, he said softly, still chewing as he rose to his feet. "Relax, I need you to hold still for a moment." Somehow, I was overcome by the sudden urge to obey. He grabbed my face and pried my mouth open. I was too shocked to move. It just happened so fast. He leaned down and spat the stinking foul red mush his teeth had turned the doe's heart into right down my throat. He held my gaze the entire time, clasping my mouth shut the second the last bit of red had landed on my tongue. My fear reflected in his steely eyes. Tears kept on rolling down my face. "You need to swallow now." I shook my head, letting out a choked sob as I tried to ignore the rotten taste. "I'm not letting you go until you swallow," he sighed, readjusting his grip. "Come on, don't make this any harder than it needs to be. Trust me, you'll thank me for this." Something about his tone was oddly disarming. I squeezed my eyes shut, grimaced, and gulped it down. He removed his hand and I stuck out my tongue to prove there was nothing left. The effect hit me immediately as I was overcome by a serene, pulse-slowing calmness. The tension disappeared from my shoulders and I let go of a long breath, wiping the tears from my puffy red cheeks. "Feels good, don't it?" the Leshy asked. "This is sure to make me sick," I grumbled. "It won't. Sure, it'd be tastier if it were fresher, but it serves the same purpose. The flesh of a doe from these woods steals the nerves when consumed raw." "Huh, why'd you have to make me eat the heart, though?" He looked seriously puzzled. "Well, because it's the best part." Shaking his head at my cluelessness, he added, "I saw your mother slay this one last night. She looked quite out of it, waltzing through the darkness with that machete on her." "I think she's dying," I blurted out. "I don't know what's going on with her. She seemed fine yesterday. But then she started talking about the Hulda-folk, whatever that is. And now she's just gone completely crazy. She's not making any sense." I had to catch my breath before carrying on, but the Leshy nearly held up a hand, cutting me off. "We'll warn you not to speak too loudly of the Hulda-folk. There are forces here that even I find difficult to control." He paused, regarding me with something akin to pity. "I understand that this will be hard for you, gentle soul. But trust that all pain and grief shall pass someday. That's what I'll leave you with. Return to your mother, stay by her side, and if you can, bid her farewell from me too." "So she really is going to die?" The Huldefolk have to pay their toll to hell. Eris. He stood up and, to my surprise, helped me to my feet. They'll take the carcass off your hands. What belongs in the woods will be mine again. Run along, wench. Not wanting to overstay my welcome, I headed back to the house as fast as I could. I didn't think that the Leshy had lied to me, and that assumption was confirmed when I heard a hair-raising cry the moment I burst through the front door. It was my mother's voice, agonized and frightened, coming from inside the master bedroom. I found my father at the top of the staircase, looking down at me and frantically motioning for me to hurry. We hastened down the hallway together, telling the girls to stay in their rooms as they briefly stuck their heads out. We shoved open the bedroom door just in time to see Mom crawling off the bed on her hands and feet, facing the ceiling in a grotesque spider-like manner, howling like a banshee. It was probably the most horrifically gruesome sight I ever had the displeasure of beholding, but the Doe's heart had not yet ceased to affect me. The unnatural, relentless calm allowed me to break through my mental fog and rush to my mother's side, gathering her frail, writhing body in my arms and forcing her into a hug. Dad was screaming. In fact, he couldn't stop screaming. He was clawing at the skin of his own face, tugging on his hair and wailing until I turned and told him to finally shut up. I understood the sentiment perfectly, but some daughterly instinct of mine told me that these were my mother's last moments. I didn't want her to meet her death surrounded by panic and despair. "Mom," I whispered to her as the haze in her eyes lit up. Her chapped lips stretched into a wan smile. She didn't say anything, merely grasped my arm with her fingers. Her hand was incredibly cold. I pulled her a little closer and she let out a low moan. "Fiona," she rasped out. "Mommy, I'm here. Is it okay?" "Sure. Everything's okay, Mom." "Fiona, he'll be going now." "I know." "Are you?" Her voice faltered and she swallowed. "Gonna be okay." "You'll be fine, Mommy." I buried my face in the crook of her neck as she weakly wrapped her arms around my shoulders. "See you when you're ready, honey," she muttered into my ear before her head dropped onto my chest. I sat there on the floor, cradling her until I was afraid her body would begin to stiffen. I laid her out on the bed. Her eyes were shut, her mouth slightly curved. I hadn't expected this, but she actually looked peaceful. The minutes preceding her death had been fearful and excruciating, but the moment itself had been harmonious. The ground was frozen and rock hard when Dad and I dug out the grave. It wasn't easy, but we managed. We laid her to rest beneath the red meadow, calling everyone she was close with as well as the extended family. Jem didn't show up, but CAs obviously came, and so did Mom's sisters and brothers from out of state. We hosted a small gathering at our house. CAs and the girls cried their eyes out. Dad kept his composure during the funeral service, but afterwards he was never the same. No matter how often they'd fought, no matter how many times Mom had cussed him out and had compared her to other women, her demise left him adrift and just utterly shattered. As soon as my sisters were out of the house, he moved to some sunny place where he could ogle bikini babes and pretend he hadn't lost the love of his life. So I told all this to Jacek as we sat on the couch. Most of it, at least. "I'm really sorry," he said when I concluded my report. "I didn't mean to tear open any old wounds." I regarded him with a tilted head. "You haven't seen Mom down there by any chance, have you?" "In hell, no. That's not quite how it works. Not everybody gets that kind of an afterlife." His eyes were glistening a little. "Sorry," he repeated, stealthily wiping the moisture away. "It's cool." CAs had wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin on my shoulder. "CA near, man. Triple hug. I know she meant a lot to you." Jacek gave him a weird look, but after a moment of consideration, very briefly joined us to form a warm, comfortable sandwich. After a few seconds, he drew back and awkwardly cleared his throat. "Two things. Remember that dog I had with me sometimes?" "Sure do." "It's not still around by any chance, is it?" "Yeah," I replied. "We ran into it a couple days ago. Seemed to miss you a lot. It still knew me." "Huh. Who would have guessed? I thought it hated the surface. Always considered myself selfish for summoning it in the first place. Wow. I feel like twice as shitty now." He coughed. "Anyways, second question. Did you ever find out more about the Huldefolk?" "Nope." "Well, no matter." A sly grin began to unfurl on his lips. "I might have an idea." Telling Jacek the story of my mother's death was exceptionally painful, but turned out to be a pretty good decision. He said that he'd go get the dog after we'd finished our talk. I made him wait until I texted my employees that there'd be a man dressed in all black walking around in the woods today, and not to stop him. The older ones, namely Jose and Gus, still remembered the Dark Miller, so I actually got replies from them asking if he was back to stay now. Casimir and I stayed in the comfort of the house, busying ourselves with negligible chores and planning until he returned. "Incoming," Kies announced upon glancing out the window. I stepped out onto the porch to find Jacek crossing the red meadow. Jumping around him was the big black dog, nuzzling him and drooling everywhere. It sat down in front of the porch, waiting politely as the miller walked up to us. "Here's my plan," he began, raking a hand through slobbered-on hair. "Steal something from this Tom Hayes person. Anything. Can be a hat, a couple hairs, a goddamn shoelace, whatever. You give that to me, and Licorice will do the rest." "Licorice," I echoed. Right, that was his name. Casimir shuddered as he threw a glance at the creature happily rolling around in the snow. "Why would you give your creepy-ass zombie dog such a cute name? That's just kinda jarring, no?" "Well, Casimir Novak, it just so happens to be my creepy-ass zombie dog and I can name it whatever I want," Jacek replied with an easy chuckle. "Also a little more respect. He's a good boy. He's gonna save your sorry butts. Hellhounds are made to rally stray souls." I wasn't entirely sure where he was going with this, but it seemed that he wasn't quite done with his instructions either. "Once this Tom Hayes has no leverage anymore, you can fire him or kill him. I'll leave that up to you. Your problem's bigger than him though, isn't it? You need to cover this whole thing up again. Maybe we should take care of that first." I nodded, watching as Jacek started chewing on his lower lip in thought. "I have a possible solution, at least a temporary one until it's all blown over and people start forgetting about you again," he said. "But you won't like it." I told him I was open for anything, and he smiled. "That's good. So, do you think you trust me enough to do something intense?" "Intense how?" His grin widened. "Going to hell." Ciaz and I simply stared at him for a couple seconds. He stared back, inkwell eyes sparkling. My little brother took a swift step back, raising his hands. "Nope, sorry buddy, not happening. Take my sister. She's into that sort of thing. But I'm like not. Come on, it's awesome down there. You'll love." "Nope, I'm not going. Fiona gets horny when she's scared. She'll have a hell of a time, but I'd prefer to keep my head on my shoulders." I stepped on his foot, hard. "I told you that in confidence," I hissed. "Just sometimes," I corrected, addressing my ex. "You people are sick," Jacek said cheerfully. "So Fiona, this is about your land. What'll it be?" "Oh, I'm doing this," I confirmed. "But purely historically speaking, I know you like sending me into things blindfolded. So what exactly is our plan here?" "What's it matter?" Jacek drawled, reaching into his pocket to pull out a pack of cigarettes. He placed one between his lips, then snapped his fingers a few times until a tiny flame appeared, hovering above his knuckles. He used it to light his smoke. "You only have to convince a friend of mine that your woods are worth protecting. You'd go to that length to save your forest, right?" he mumbled, not fully opening his mouth so the cigarette wouldn't fall out. "I didn't know you started smoking." I pressed out, hurriedly tearing my eyes from his lips when he looked up. "Dreadful habit, isn't it? Aren't you gonna ask about the fire thing?" I was gonna. I just needed a segue. "Good segue," Jacek smiled. "Did you know that in hell you can make deals with just about anything? Even the fire. I promised that I'd use it for a lot of destruction, and that I'd cause all the pain with it could ever wish for. So it's inside of me now." I stared at him in silence for a moment, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I need to talk to my brother for a sec." I finally gritted out, shoving CAs inside and leaving Jacek on the porch to finish his smoke. "Did you hear that?" I whispered. "That totally sounded like a threat, didn't it? He's gonna drag me to hell, and then hell burn down the woods." "That's what you got from that exchange?" Casimir asked, raising a brow. "Why? What did you get?" My brother cleared his throat, assuming a much deeper, gruffer voice to mimic Jacek. "Hey baby girl, look how much cooler I've become since you last saw me. I can make fire now." I took a step back. "What? Dude, that's not what's happening here." Casimir chuckled dryly. "Oh, it so is. Anyways, it's not a threat. He was powerful even before you two broke up. Now like, if he wanted to hurt us, he would have done it by now." Hard to argue with that. I still hated CAs for leaving me alone with my ex, but I could hardly force him to come, especially since I was pretty sure I could handle myself. So I went back outside, informing Jasek that I was ready to go if he wanted to. Nice, but you were right before. He stepped just a little closer to me. This friend of mine we'll be meeting is technically my boss. The Huldefalk, as you know, pays a toll to hell by taking a life every now and then. Ergo, they answer to us. So if you were to convince my boss, he could order the Huldefalk to hide your land. Imagine the entire forest, surrounded by a charm that keeps outsiders from noticing it. Maybe folks would still read about the woods online, but if anyone else decided to come out here and explore, they simply wouldn't find anything. I nodded along. That would be great, and the Huldefalk can really do something like that. Oh yeah, they are the hidden people after all. They would never do it if you asked them to, but if it's a direct command from hell, they'd have to. Afterwards, you can take care of Tom Hayes and that'll be it. He gave me a reassuring smile. Okay, but your boss, that's the devil, no? Sure, he said steadily. I'll have to sweet-talk the actual devil. Yup. Well, fuck me. Jasek threw his head back and shot a glance skyward, clearly discarding a sidelong comment. It's not so bad. He's a chill guy. He won't care that you don't pray to him. He's super accepting. Besides, he likes me a lot, so that's already a point in your favor. I sighed. Let's just go before I start overthinking this. How do we get there? Is there a portal in the mill or something? No. He plucked the cigarette from his lips. It was only then that I realized it looked kind of strange. It was black and red, and there was something written along the side in tiny letters. Fire. Walk with me, Jasek said loudly as he tossed the cigarette into the snow at our feet. It immediately went up into flames, cutting a blazing red lane through the powdery white. Licorice perked up, running to Jetek's side and poking him with his snout. "Wanna come along, boy? Ain't been home in a while, have you?" The miller raised his hand to pet the beast. He gestured for me to follow as he stepped right into the fire and started walking down the path. The dog trailed after him, wagging his tail. After glancing back to the house over my shoulder one last time and seeing Casimir wave to me from the window, I gave a deep sigh and followed Jasek Hedman into the dancing flames. As expected, the fire emanated no heat. These were welcoming flames. Their crackling sounded almost cheerful, and their light strongly stood out against the drizzly gray sky. The further we proceeded down this otherworldly path, the darker everything around us became. I soon realized that we weren't anywhere near the woods anymore, despite having only taken a few steps. This was like descending a staircase, only that I didn't know what was waiting on the floor below. I wondered if Casimir could still see us marching off from where he was standing, or if we'd already changed sides. It was hard to tell. Everything felt so surreal all of a sudden. The situation instilled within me a whole new kind of fear. It didn't know what to be frightened of, what to expect. I felt like I was being sucked into a black hole, and I was afraid I wouldn't come out as myself anymore. We were all alone in an empty, pitch-black space. I couldn't even see the ground we were walking on. I just kept taking step after step after step. Our surroundings defied logic and rational thinking, for despite the darkness, I could clearly see Jasek and the dog walking ahead. The miller seemed to be completely unmoved by this aura of existential dread his doorway emitted. He just walked on, pet beast by his side, eyes fixated on something I couldn't see. Mounting panic spurring me on, I ran to catch up with Jasek. He just smiled. "This isn't what you're used to. I know, but it'll be over soon. We're almost there." "Where is it that we are exactly?" "This is nowhere. It's only a corridor, a hallway. It'll lead us to one of Hell's populated junctions. The thing about Hell is that you never know what sphere you're in, but well, just ask around. There's a sphere for every cardinal sin, and the boss office is in Pride. There's these elevators everywhere, so we probably gotta take one to get us further down. Pride is the sphere that's all the way at the bottom. 'Cause it's the worst sin. Yeah, it puts you above God, 'cause God is the greatest and all that. Since you know the devil, have you met God too?" "Oh no, and I'd rather not. This is where I belong. And these days I can't even go near a church. Makes me sick." "How's that?" Blank magic contorts the practitioner's body. It jumbles up your insides. Your guts will be all over the place. They correspond to your thoughts, strong emotions, outward influences, stuff like that. That's why when I felt like you were breaking my heart, it just disappeared, crumpled up and died. Jasek suddenly drew close again, whispering in my ear like he was sharing a secret. "If you were to cut me open right now, you could see my bowels writhing like a snake." Raising his head, he added, Hey look, there's the door. There really was a door, a plain wooden door in the middle of nothing. He reached for the door handle, resting his fingers on it but not pulling. Hey, Fiona? He sounded hesitant all of a sudden, and when he spoke, he didn't look me in the eye. Basically, I'd just like for you not to freak out and to trust me, I guess. If that's something you could do, he sighed, clearly trying to collect his thoughts. This was a weird moment to bring up what had happened between us, but it seemed to really gnaw at him. Why haven't you asked me to reverse the wedding dress curse yet? He inquired. I don't know. I've gotten so used to it, it just wasn't on my mind. That's good, because, well, I can't. Don't know how. Curses are weird sometimes. I acted purely on instinct when I did that to you, so I don't know. I don't know how to take it back. He shook his head with a wry smile. I'm so incredibly sorry. I mean, I can live without my heart. I literally don't need any organs to survive, but I can't imagine going around in that big-ass dress has always been easy. I've almost died twice because of it, I admitted, shrugging. Shit. Hey, I don't mind it. Not really. It's not in the way, as long as I'm careful. And you can make it up to me if you just take me to see your boss, I said steadfastly. Besides, I kinda think it's nice. Very impractical, but nice. It makes me feel pretty. Okay, Jacek breathed, regarding me like he wasn't quite sure what to make of my response. I mean, you are dreadfully pretty. His voice was all quiet again, but went back to normal after he swallowed audibly. He tugged the door open, and thus we set foot into hell. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was definitely not this. There was a lot of light behind that door. Red light, like in a club. The streets we suddenly found ourselves walking on were busy, full of people pushing and shoving. They actually looked pretty normal. Sure, some were missing a limb or part of their faces, but nothing too serious. Only a few of them were truly unsettling. The fact that almost everything was on fire was more disconcerting. The tops of the skyscrapers looming ahead, the sparse decorative trees, the storefronts and traffic signs. Jacek sighed, reaching into his pocket and producing a pair of sunglasses. They really help with the brightness down here. I know it seems insufferable now, but you'll get used to it, he explained. They suit you, I remarked. He grinned, tipping them down to give me a silly little wink. Let's go. He stopped a couple people on our way, asking them where to find the nearest elevator. Eventually, we were directed to a building so tall it disappeared somewhere in the orange clouds above us. That's the shaft. We appear to be on Wrath, so we just have to go down a little ways. Pride is the next one, right below. Okay, I mumbled, head reeling. There was no line in front of the shaft, and mere seconds after being called, the elevator arrived with a bing. The doors slowly slid open, revealing a red little room. Only that it wasn't empty. I let out a sharp cry upon laying eyes on what was waiting inside. Describing it won't quite do it justice, but I'll try. It was an enormous spider, but it also wasn't. The two parts of its body were veiny and pulsing, not black or brown and furry like a normal spider would be, but made of actual human-looking skin and flesh. Its 8 eyes were, though varying in size, distinctly human, and its fangs a solid yellowish white. Its legs were more like a bunch of human arms and legs molten together, 6 hairy feet firmly planted on the floor, while its 2 front arms, which ended in hands, appeared to be knitting. It was by far the most horrifying and disgusting creature I'd ever seen, and I believe that's saying something coming from a person who has received involuntary hugs from a Vodayanoi. Jacek sect, giving me an almost disapproving glance. He started towards the open doors, but I grabbed him, holding him back. I'm not going in there, I hissed. No way. Aw, come on. You've got to be kidding me. Ain't you face down far worse? As a matter of fact, I haven't. My eyes kept darting between him and the spider. Licorice had already bounded into the small chamber. He was wagging his tail like he hadn't a care in the world, but I probably wouldn't either if I was his size. So this is where you draw the line? She doesn't even look threatening. She's knitting. Isn't that nice? Do you knit? Maybe you'll have something to talk about. Jacek, please. Can't we wait until she's off? I'm not going anywhere, the spider called out. I'm elevator security. See? Jacek nodded, gesturing at the open doorway. After you, madam. I grunted, shoving past him and into the cramped red room. Patting my skirt, I gave the spider a forced sidelong smile, and that's when it happened. Just as Jacek was about to enter, the doors closed, and before I could even think of stopping the horrid machine somehow, the cabin began its rapid descent, separating me from my trusty guide and leaving me alone, wedged between the spider and the hellhound. Ever lost your mom or dad at the grocery store when you were a kid? That's exactly how I felt when the prematurely closing elevator doors separated me from Jacek. I was grateful that Licorice was still there at least, but that didn't do much to distract me from the fact that I was plummeting down to the deepest level of hell without my trusty tour guide. The huge spider made of human body parts beside me honestly just made it all 10 times worse. I tried to keep it together, I really did, but when the cabin came to a halt and the doors opened, revealing a group of easily a dozen people waiting to push into the elevator, I could barely contain my frustration. Claustrophobia gnawing at me, I hastily shoved my way past the small crowd, closely followed by Licorice. I had to actually fight to get out, with everyone rushing into the opposite direction of me. The simple act of exiting the cabin turned into a physical struggle. At last, I staggered out onto the street, heart pounding. Okay, stay where you are. Jace's gonna find you. I tried to calm my nerves. Licorice soothingly licked the side of my face, and I gratefully dragged a weary hand over his scraggly fur. Everything would be alright. I'd just have to stay where I was, and wait for Jacek to make his way over to me. Planting my feet firmly on the ground beside the elevator, I nervously stared at the shaft. I tried not to pay too much attention to my surroundings. The painful reality of my current situation had begun to sink in. These weren't my woods. I wasn't walking among the tall frost-painted trees. There was no snow to pleasantly crunch beneath my shoes, no winter sun smiling down at me. This was the very lowest sphere of hell. A densely populated city where everything was blazing flames and billowing smoke that swallowed the light. And worst of all, I had no idea what to expect of this place and its inhabitants. The Leshy was scary, yes. I never knew what to make of him either, but this was different. At home the creatures were familiar. They terrified me. Sure, they were all deadly in their own way, but I knew them. I had grown up with stories of them, with cautionary tales as well as humorous anecdotes. I was aware of how dangerous they were when at their worst, but also of how benign when at their best. Thus I had seen the best and the worst of the Leshy, but neither of anybody in this godforsaken hole. I felt alienated, completely helpless in the face of this foreign environment. Everything here was utterly unnatural. Nobody here was assuming a different form to hide their monstrous appearance. Nobody's voice was made to sound like a bird song or the wind. This wasn't my world. I spun around upon hearing the ding of the elevator, and when Jacek stepped outside, I abandoned all thoughts of boundaries and dignity and threw myself into his arms. I didn't do it out of some romantic notion or to play the damsel in distress. I acted purely on impulse. I didn't get why at first either, but when Jacek wordlessly leaned in to hold me, I realized that this was familiar, comfortable even. I soaked up the feeling of safety he exuded like a sponge. Eventually, we awkwardly untangled ourselves, each having to look away for a moment and take some deep breaths. "You're shaking," he observed after a few seconds. "Uh-huh," was all I could manage to say. He snorted. "That is so. I never thought you could look this uneasy somewhere. Anywhere. Honestly, when I took you down here, I thought it wouldn't be a problem for you." To my surprise, he didn't sound reproachful or condescending, just genuinely surprised and a tad apologetic. "You're okay, right?" "Sure," I said quickly. "Lord, I'm sorry, gorgeous. Well, I'm here now. I'll stay close." It was all I could do not to ask him to hold my hand while walking. The streets in Pride were even more crowded than what I'd seen in Wrath. People kept shoving past us, getting uncomfortably close and brushing our shoulders with no regard for personal space. The fear of being trampled to death seemed concrete and imminent. Licorice helped cut our way through the bustle, but I still flinched every time I could feel a stranger's breath on my face or another arm touching mine. "Don't worry," Jacek said to me from the side. "They only care about themselves." "What do you do down here anyways? Are these all sinners?" They were at one point. See, the boss has two main objectives for the lot of us. First, we obviously work on and encourage society's downfall as slowly and excruciatingly as possible. That's what I do on the surface. I only come here to attend meetings and go grocery shopping and stuff. Much cheaper than up top. "Oh yeah? What are you working on exactly?" I inquired. He lit up. It'd take a while to explain. I'm on several different projects, but I'd love to show you sometime. He cleared his throat. "Once we're out of here, if you want to see." "I'd love to," I replied in earnest. "So what's going on down here?" Okay, so the folks around us actually work and live here. They were sinners at one point, but they never overdid it. The boss doesn't employ serial killers or tyrants or what have you. Those he actually detests, because they're doing to humanity what he wants to do, encroaching on his territory, you know. Therefore, the real scum goes in the prisons. Each of the spheres has one, and these good people here spend eternity tormenting the inmates, which is something of a punishment in itself. Oh, and of course, some people also run the stores and clubs and stuff like that, but the boss presides over all. Oh, huh. I guess I always thought hell would be more medieval-like, not a huge modern metropolis, I remarked. How so? Corporate greed, working in a dead-end job until the end of time, an unfeeling boss who ruthlessly plays favorites and never gives you a word of appreciation unless you incessantly kiss his ass. So you're saying you're an ass kisser? The worst. But it's easy for me. I'm not like the rest. I willingly gave myself over to him. I didn't wait until I died. He just loves that. And seeing as it doesn't happen every day, I get the special treatment and the nicest jobs. I often run his personal errands too, like an old-time gentleman's servant. He chuckled. It's great fun, really. It was good you left the mill then. You seem to truly enjoy this, I muttered pensively, feeling an unwelcome, inexplicable sting in my chest. Totally. All right, we made it. Look. He pointed up a building that would have put the Trump Tower to shame. It stood out among the others due to mere lavishness. Before I had more time to admire this impressive feat of architecture, Jacek had already started dragging me into the building's spacious lobby. He went right up to the desk where an annoyed-looking woman with short hair greeted him with little enthusiasm. Her mouth had been stitched shut, blood encrusting the seams. She couldn't talk properly, only pressing out short, muffled sentences. Hey, Karen? Is the boss in? Sure, she mumbled. He's in his TV room. I'll tell him you're coming. Thanks, you're a doll. Jacek led me up to another smaller elevator, lighting a cigarette as he went. Is smoking indoors allowed here? It's strongly recommended. This elevator ride was much more harmonious, but I was still getting more and more tense the higher we got. When the elevator finally dinged its arrival, I was shaking like a leaf. I'm going nuts, I confessed. Not to make things awkward, but can you hug me again? Just for a second. Jacek gave me a surprised look. Then he wordlessly turned to me, removing his cigarette from between his lips to hold it far away from me as his other arm snaked around my waist. My throat had suddenly gone bone dry. I pressed myself up against him for a mere moment until he pulled back, chuckling awkwardly and moving to step out through the opening doors. Relax, the boss is chill. Okay, there we go. Jacek led me and his jumpy dog down a couple corridors before finally stopping in front of a black door. He knocked and we waited for a beat until an annoyed-sounding voice told us to come in. Jacek held the door for me, and we stepped inside. It was a nice, large room with a big flat screen mounted to the wall and a cushy gray sofa facing it. While this room was a relatively tame sight, the person, or rather creature, standing in the middle of it instantly drew a scream from my throat. He was the size of a person, but at the same time that of a bull or a football field or maybe a whole continent, despite being able to fit into that room. He turned to us with a smile that had too many teeth, and also none at all. When he opened his mouth to speak, I stared down into a black, endless hole. I didn't know what I was seeing. My mind was howling, trying to comprehend, trying to piece these conflicting impressions together. My thoughts were racing, my heart pounding. The longer I looked at this thing, the more everything seemed to spin out of control. I fell to my knees. Why couldn't I understand this? Were my eyes deceiving me? Was this real? Was anything real? No, nothing was real anymore. Nothing was true. Nothing could be believed. Oh, I see, we've got company. A rich, gentle baritone cut through my frantic haze, and suddenly, I wasn't looking at something incomprehensible anymore. What was standing there in front of us wasn't a cosmic nightmare anymore. It was a man, leaning casually against the back of the couch. A normal-looking, middle-aged guy with a gray-streaked beard and an open, carefree smile. He was barefoot, only dressed in sweatpants and a t-shirt. Lovely. Jacek. I'll go out on a whim here and assume that this little firecracker is the infamous Fiona Novak. She is. Fiona, this is, well, my boss, Jacek said. I slowly got to my feet and walked over to the man, the devil, reaching out to take his extended hand. It was warm and soft. It's a pleasure to meet you. Call me Nick. Hi, I croaked. It's, good to meet you too. Sorry about before. I sometimes forget that my appearance is an acquired taste. he said, squeezing my fingers with distinct pleasure. So, as I am prone to understand, you've been brought here by Mr. Hetman to ask a favor of me. Yes, sir. I mean Nick. Suddenly we were on the other side of the couch. We hadn't moved an inch, not on our own accord. And yet, we found ourselves closer to the TV by several feet. The devil plopped down, sighing contentedly. Sit, he commanded. Jacek took a seat beside him and I followed suit, thankful for the shield my former boyfriend established between the beast and myself. Despite not seeming put off by the unsettling nature of the other man in the slightest, he appeared to be acutely aware of my own discomfort. Nice try, Jakush. Without having gotten up, the devil was now sitting by my other side, uncomfortably close. Oh, thank you not to play the knight in shining armor. Now, Miss Novak, you're not really an advocate or follower of mine, are you? His tone didn't sound accusatory in the least. What makes you think you can come in here and accost me? He asked genially. I squirmed uneasily, avoiding his gaze, not sure how to handle these conflicting messages. I guess I just need help, I stammered. We all do sometimes. The man put an arm around me, pulling me close and rubbing my shoulder. Jacek jumped to his feet, staring at his employer in shock. The devil laughed, letting go of me and waving him off. Cool your jets, Miller. If I wanted her, I would have had her already. Look at how she's shrinking away. He leaned forward, tapping Jacek's belly. If I wanted her, I could make her like it. Her response would be quite different then. I couldn't help but gag slightly in the back of my throat. I tried not to show it, tried to swallow it up. No use in antagonizing the being I was about to ask a huge favor of, as much as I would have liked to. Jacek lowered himself back down, chest heaving. The devil regarded Jacek with unrestrained amusement. Forgive me, son, but I simply had to know. Know what? I inquired, feeling a tad dense. The devil shrugged. Unimportant. All right, Fiona, state your case. What is it that you want me to do for you? You command the hidden people, don't you? They pay you a toll after all. Go on. I have a plot of land. I need it to be veiled somehow, obscured by magical means. People have been trying and succeeding to access it. Thought of putting up a fence? Sure, but the Leshy doesn't want that. He'd gut me. He's a bit odd. Oh yeah, I have a Leshy on my land. Nick grinned. You sure do. So you want me to order the Hold of Folk to hide it? Yes. An agonizing period of silence ensued. Then the devil shrugged. Yeah, okay. What? That easy. Would you prefer I give you a series of inhumanely cruel tasks to complete in order to win my benevolence? And no, I hastened to reply. Good. The wood shall be hidden from all except those you choose to inaugurate. Consider it done. He gave me a cheerful smile. You kids want a beer? Gladly, Jacek muttered. The second the word had left his lips, he and I were both holding a large can of Guinness each. Cheers. The miller clinked his can against mine as I merely stared down at it in confusion. And there's nothing I have to do in return? I asked Nick, because you made it seem that way before. I did, didn't I? He smirked, clearly satisfied with himself. No, don't bother. Truth be told, I really like the Novak children. You're my third favorite. How come? We haven't met before, have we? No? But let's just say that I love the Black Miller very much, and he's told me quite a bit about you. Oh, great. I gritted out, giving Jacek a sidelong glare that made him hide his face behind the drink. I've already met your brothers, of course. That is to say, most of them. I nearly spat out a mouthful of beer. You needn't look so surprised, Nick remarked. You've met Marion? Is he here? I almost cried out. No, the guy upstairs never lets me have any of the children. Well, most of the time at least. He took Marion, and honestly, I'm happy he did. Little pest that he was. I came to see him when he was waiting in purgatory, and he kicked me in the shin and told me to go fuck myself. Can you believe it? He laughed quietly. I remember it like it was yesterday, but that was before I learned more about you all. As for the one you call Casimir, I'm sure you'll know where he'll end up once his mortal body fails him. I drew in a slow breath. I suppose I can imagine. He's a good boy. I'll welcome him with open arms. The hunger that man displays, that unfeeling, lustful, entirely self-serving nature, seems awfully devoted to you, though. The devil shrugged. I watch him occasionally. I just love his coping mechanisms, you know. I appreciate that kind of behavior. I guess you would. Sia's a pretty winning guy. Definitely. And then there's Jeremy. I flinched so hard some beer spilled from my can. Nick smiled very, very sweetly. You haven't seen that one in a bit, have you? Do you know what became of him? I never found out, I confessed. The devil leaned in closer. Want me to show you? Fiona. No. Jacek chimed in. Turning to Nick, he added, we should go now. Thanks for your time, boss. I'll see you on Sunday. Wait, I want to see. It was against my own better judgment that I contradicted Jacek, but the truth of the matter was that I hadn't seen or heard from Jem ever since he had cut contact with me and the rest of my family over a decade ago. I had tried to look him up a bunch of times but never found anything. Perhaps he'd chosen to change his name. Jacek swallowed audibly. It would really be better if you didn't. I was kind of surprised he would know anything about my younger brother, but before I could address his concerns, Nick had produced a remote and switched on the big TV across from us. I instantly pressed my hands over my ears as incoherent screaming and agonized wails rang out. The can of beer fell to the floor, its contents flowing freely over the carpet. More disturbing yet, however, was the image presented to me on screen. It was a man, not much younger than me, resembling distinctly the memories I had of Jem in our youth. He was handsome, not quite as much as Casimir, but definitely appealing, or rather he must have been at some point. As it was though, he looked almost like a living corpse. He was wholly nude, drenched in blood that streamed out of several gashes all over his body. Under different circumstances, he'd have probably already bled to death, but he was still standing, bleeding. He was in a dimly lit holding cell in the corner, a pile of what I reluctantly identified as feces, and he kept throwing himself against the bars again and again, howling like a madman. It was horrifying beyond measure. I couldn't say a thing, merely covering my eyes helplessly until Nick turned off the TV and the noises ceased. Well, I reckon that was a bit distressing to see, but trust me, he's getting what he deserves. I don't take kindly to people who seek to topple humanity themselves. That's my show to run. He let go of a soft sigh. Jeremy Novak, serial killer, never got caught to face a human jury, and after number 42 I just had to intercede. So I sent someone to prematurely collect his soul for me. He gave me a swift pat on the knee, and I bet you can guess who. That's it for tonight's stories, but the nightmares never end. If you enjoyed these chilling tales, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Got a scary experience of your own? Share it in the comments. I just might feature it in a future video. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, some things are scarier than they seem in the dark.